Hello viewers and welcome to the Tyrantcast. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I present you with the 15th episode of a podcast style, primarily audio discussion topic centric video series. And for today's episode I have the honor of being joined by my two very best friends and closest Conquest LCG colleagues. But before we check in as usual with our Warmaster, John, it's been a few episodes since Sam and I have had you on with us, so why don't you reintroduce yourself and let our listeners know what you've been up to lately?
Well, hello there. I'm John Gobeil. I'm one of the admins for the Conquest Facebook group, and I run the Toronto Conquest meta, or with another individual. I've been a little bit into Thrones lately as well, but Conquest is my first love, and yeah, that's about all I do.
Well, I guess I'm delighted to have you back on. I'm glad that we haven't completely lost you to a Game of Thrones, and I just want to say that I hugely appreciate what you do for your local community, building that up, and of course, in moderating our forums and just contributing to the online Conquest LCG community. Out of really everyone I know, you're someone whose opinion I value well above that of most, and since we have some particularly exciting Necrons news to look forward to covering in this episode, I really look forward to hearing what you have to say on the topic. But as always, I'm also joined by my partner in crime, our community Warmaster. So Sam, how are you, and what's been new with you in the past couple weeks?
Well, I've been Warmastering here. We just started our spring season of the Black Crusade, and we've got a record turnout of 187 players. So
that is impressive.
A huge turnout. And like me personally, I don't really care, I guess, if it's big or small, but it's just great for the health of the game. It's just...
Keep telling yourself that, Sam.
Yeah. Hey, look, I got 3 kids. It works. So, at any rate, no, great turnout. It's great for the health of the game. Really cool to see this many people into Conquest. And I heard that, I think Thrones had 192, Paul Steiner told me. So the fact that we were 5 off from that, I didn't even think we'd get to that. So, very cool. I don't know, I play a little bit of Conquest in real life. I'm starting my new job, so I'm not on the road anymore. Just been a busy couple weeks, man.
Yeah.
What's up with you?
Well, I guess first off, I'm glad to hear that everything's going well for you, Sam. It's fantastic that the Black Crusade has a just record-shattering turnout. For me, I'm doing about as well as I ever am. I'm definitely in a huge frenzy of academic activity. In the next 8 days, I have 6 different midterm exams, so unfortunately that's drawn some of my attention away from Conquest, and though I'm loath to admit it, I'm slowly but surely coming to terms with the fact that I won't always be able to keep up my prodigious output of daily video content, but I'll definitely try to keep it up as best as I can, and to all of our dear listeners out there, rest assured that I'm indeed in this for the long term, unlike some of my past LOTR LCG projects. I look forward to continuing to output Conquest content for months and years to come, and hopefully all this college stuff is no more than just a temporary distraction. But to the both of you, thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be quite the episode indeed, and the 3 of us have a huge swath of news topics to cover. The day that we're sitting down to record this episode is actually my 30th birthday, and
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Well, thank you. They actually sang that in one of my classes today, so that was the first time that's happened in a great many years, and it was only hugely embarrassing. But
it's a shame there's copyright laws, because I was thinking we should play Katy Perry's birthday song as our outro music today.
I would be willing to accept that as a birthday gift. But
Yes, me too.
1 month from now, we'll actually have the 1-year anniversary of the very first Hive Tyrant video, that old solo tutorial I made for how to play the game, which was made by someone that had at that point only played a grand total of 3 games. And Sam, since you and I actually got together to produce the last episode of the Tyrantcast, there has just been a ridiculous number of news items put out by Fantasy Flight Games. The street date for the final Gambit, the 6th and final war pack of the Planetfall cycle, has been unveiled to be May 5th. That's the street date. That's when it's going to be available at retailers everywhere. And Legions of Death, our upcoming second deluxe expansion for Conquest, is officially on the boat, so it should hopefully be available at retailers everywhere in no more than a mere matter of weeks. And still further, the Jungles of Nectivus, the first war pack of the Death World cycle, is already at the printers as well. So FFG is not only keeping the expansions coming out fast and furious, but in the past 2 weeks, they've also unleashed a trio of preview articles fully spoiling not just our 2 upcoming Legions of Death Necron faction warlords, but also a Necron warlord meant to debut in the Death World cycle. We saw an article called Enslave the Galaxy, which unveiled Nahumekh, the spot gloss promo warlord card, which is available in the regional championship kits. His entire premise is decreasing enemy army unit HP, and you've got some incentivization to ally with multiple non-Necron factions. We also saw an article called Wake the Sleepers, which revealed Anrakyr the Traveller, and his entire gimmick is manipulation of discard piles, so resurrecting your units as well as your opponent's units. And then last but not least, we recently saw an article called Searching for Truth, which spoiled Illuminor Szeras, and his concept is all about generating resources while healing your damaged Necron units. But if that was not already enough, the news does not end there, because FFG Organized Play has released a trio of articles of their own. They are What is a Tournament, the Championship Series, and Intentional Draws. So it's kind of the start of a series of articles meant to just familiarize players with organized play. It explains what you can expect when you're in a competitive tournament environment for someone that's never gone to one before. It explains how, the store championships are broken down to regionals, to national championships, and how it all eventually builds toward the world championships. And then they also have one last article kind of explaining why Fantasy Flight Games has decided to go forward with legalizing agreed upon draws for players. And still further, the late 2016, early 2017 store championship kits can be ordered now. We don't know what the prizes are going to be, but the deadline for application is May 17th. And as the very last piece of news, Fantasy Flight Games just started up a brand new Instagram account, which has previously unseen artwork reportedly meant to be featured upon Death World Cycle Conquest cards. So, obviously, we have a lot of topics to cover, but I have definitely said enough already, so let's move on to our traditional episode opening Tales from the Tabletop segment. So starting with you, Sam, what are some memorable games which you have played lately?
All right, well, if I can jar my memory, I always like to do these with, one great loss and one epic loss and one great win. So for the win, it's less exciting, so I'll start with that. But I did win my initial Black Crusade League game last night, round 1. Very fine fellow, but unfortunately for him, he was piloting Starblaze. And turn 1, I just stalled as long as I could. I think I played like a Flamer on 1 just to kind of test and see if he was going to go there. I promoted him, I can't remember, and then I played the Mark of Chaos on him, and he was still loading up dudes there, so then I just spent my other 5 on a Plague Beast. That scared his Warlord away. I won the planet, no problem. Everything died with the Plague Beast. Or he didn't even go there, actually. He didn't go there, and I didn't have to go there because I had initiative, so I still beat him. Kept my Flamer alive with the shield. Turn 2, it was another flamer. I just went heavy on planet 1 again. Turn 3, I had another plague beast and threw that. So now like I had 2 flamers and 2 plague beasts, and he deceptioned the one with Mark of Chaos, but even still, I just bullied right through it. So that was pretty good. Now the loss, this was rough. I put this on Facebook a couple weeks ago, but local guy here I play with, he's a good player, but he just has really tough time sticking to like, a minimum card limit in his deck, and he's always got like these 65 card decks. And it was kind of set so that like I kind of let him have the first few planets, and I was playing Old One Eye, and he was playing Kato. And I let him have the first few planets, then I calamity'd the board, got rid of a few of his units, brought a few of mine back to my hand too, and then I biomass sacrifice to get a bunch of money. And then so on like turn 4, I just turn 4, I think I had one planet. So then on turn 4, going for my second planet, which was his victory condition, I just loaded it up with elites and scared him off. And then it was like turn 5, and I just committed to the last planet because that was now both of our win conditions. And I had so nothing really happened there. And then it was turn 6, and I shouldn't have done it. I should have just waited a turn because I knew he wasn't coming to the last planet on turn 6. But I went ahead and deployed like my final elite. So I had 31 resources worth of cards at that planet. I had 3 Mgarls, all with regen, and 2 Striking Raveners, and he played Exterminatus.
Yeah,
and it hurt bad.
This is a story of the game that you lost with 31 resources.
I had 31 resources worth of cards on the board, and he had none at that planet. He might have had, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 resources worth of cards at one or something. Probably not even that many. And for $3 he blew me up, and that was the game. I mean, we played it out, but that was the game.
Yeah, that's really rough. I was going to say, I've got a feeling that I know how this one is going to end, and it did seem like that was the case. But yeah, that is a crushing loss indeed.
But I was like happy for him because he plays these giant decks, like he's got to get a hand truck to bring him into the gaming store, and he had one copy of
5
Exterminatus.
extra cards. Ooh.
He had one copy. No, 65. Yeah, 65 cards. So 15 extra cards. And he had one copy of Exterminatus, but he drew it at the right time. So I was like, oh, I have to take a picture of this dude. That was so well done. Good for you. So
I wonder if Conquest ever sees like a play variant that's like an EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander, or Commander, like Magic the Gathering players do, where you build like 100-card deck and you can only do the one copy of each card. Maybe your friend would absolutely love that. So
he probably would.
But John, how about yourself? You've been playing some Conquest lately. What are some memorable games of yours?
Well, I was playing in a spring kit recently. I was playing War. I brought War and Mavros, and the people there, we already had 2 Mavros, so they told me to bring War. And in the final round, I was playing against Anshi. I was playing against John Yeo from the Tactical Squad, and he had managed to bloody War because apparently I hadn't played against Anshi in a while and completely forgot that prelates were a thing.
Sure.
And I came in. It was planet 1. It was his win condition, and I think it was mine as well. And he had an ethereal envoy with 2 gun drones on it, which is AOE 4 Armorbane, right? And I'm sitting there with a few weenies, and I had a frontline Ardboys, and then I put another frontline Ardboys out there, and so I had like between War and the 2 Ardboys, I had 3 units that had 5 hit points.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was thinking I completely forgot about the whole new ruling on ethereal units doing AOE because he had an orbital city out, and I was expecting it to be AOE 8 in 2 turns. But of course that ruling changed. But I threw everything into planet 1 because I was winning command everywhere else, and I just said, well, screw it. I'm probably going to die, but let's see how this goes. And I managed to top deck a suppressive fire.
Wow.
That's all it took. So I managed to win that one. And then, what was it? Yeah, I guess it was yesterday. I was playing at my FLGS, just playing some fun games. And I was playing against my local metamate named Matt. He was doing a Kugath deck allied with Dark Eldar. and he had some weird stuff in it, like murder cogitators and stuff like that. But he was also running it with gut and pillage, which actually turned out really well for him because he always had far too much money. And at one point in time, I spent probably 10 minutes trying to decide where to send my warlord. I was playing Gorzod. He had 2 Helldrakes out. One of them was at Planet 1, one of them was at Planet 4. And he had a Plague Beast at Planet 1, and he had a Corrupted Teleportarium out, and both Planum and Karnath were out, and I was just like, well, so Planum is the movie unit, and Karnath is the triggered the battle ability of another planet in play.
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't know where to go. I ended up going to Aatrox Prime because I figured that was the least punishing battle ability that he would chase me away on a planet at, but that was pretty serious business there. It was fun.
Yeah, I've seen a recent game that involved a Corrupted Teleportarium moving around a Black Legion Helldrake, and when your Warlord is not safe from such a big, scary unit, that about sucks. So,
yep.
Yeah, I play tested a deck with actually Barzul, and I had like one game, it was on the 6th planet, and I had a Master Warpsmith out, and then I played all 3 Promise of Glories. And then I just did like Elite, Turbulent Rift, Elite, Turbulent Rift,
Wow.
Turbulent Rift. I mean, it was, and then I had 2 Teleportariums out too. It was those
gross.
cards are nuts. Yeah.
yeah, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. So,
My last quick story, I was playing against the Swarm Lord, and he had Planet 1 was his win condition. He had 8 Termagant tokens and a Spiker, and I was playing an Eldorath Bone Singer deck. And my 51st card, I tend to build decks, and my 51st card is just one copy of a weird surprise like Doom or whatever. And in this deck, it was the Mighty Wraith Knight, and I managed to put out a Mighty Wraith Knight late in the deploy phase and exhaust all of his Termagants.
Oh, man.
And that won me the game. I was able to chip away at them all. It was ridiculous.
Did you have a drone defense system?
No, I didn't
No.
actually. I wish I did. I was like, man, this is the time where you need to have the drone defense system. It's perfect. But no.
But you still got through all that, huh?
I had 2 Gift of Ishas, so the
Okay.
Termagants were going to be exhausted for a while. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I thought you were going to say like he played 2 Burrowing Trigons for $2 each or something.
That would suck.
well, I guess really the only games I've been playing lately is because on my channel I recently took the opportunity to, I guess, take advantage of some of these new Necron reveal articles to create a gameplay video for Nahumekh and one for Anrakyr the Traveller, and because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't completely putting up the Necrons just to be torn apart because they don't have full access to their card pool. Like, it would be no fun if these warlords were just destroyed in some proxy preview videos. I did a little bit of playtesting myself, and one of them happened to be playing that Eldorath vehicle deck for the first time, and as a player who's played Eldorath twice, and the last time was literally about 10 months ago, it was just fantastic how I was able to play for the first time a Mighty Wraith Knight, exhaust a bunch of units, send Eldorath to that planet, exhaust another unit, use Mind War to exhaust another unit, and then I was able to make sure that I didn't have enough incoming hit point reduction, that my units equipped with drone defense system were alive, and then they could just do their thing and completely obliterate the planet. So that was a pretty fantastic game, and it was a good experience for me just playing Conquest as quickly as I can without really putting a painful amount of thought into each and every move. So it was a good experience, but the Eldorath Vehicles deck is definitely a lot of fun, and those new cards are just fantastic. But like I said before, we've got a lot of different news items to cover before we delve into our Necrons, so I'll try to tear through these at a pretty decent pace. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got the Store Championship kits for the late 2016 and early 2017 season. They're available to be ordered now. The deadline is May 17th. They come with 32 copies of a tournament legal alternate art card. They've got some sort of prize support for the top 8 and top 4 players, and they also include a commemorative prize for the winner. In the past, those have come with alt art cards, playmats, and just all sorts of cool stuff like that. They include a first round bye for a regional championship in 2017 to whichever lucky player ends up taking home the championship. And something that's new to be included within these is that you're going to see 2 copies of the promotional alternate art card that they're going to give away at the 2017 World Championships. So this last year, it was the Mordecai Rune Priest alternate art card, and of course, we have no idea what it's going to be in 2017, but it's looking like the store championship kits are going to come with 2 copies of the upcoming World's alt art card, and they're meant to be given away in some sort of fun event or tournament or some sort of celebratory gathering or something along those lines that takes place after the World Championship celebration event, sometime between November 4th and November 6th or afterwards. So Fantasy Flight Games suggests it could be like a competitive tournament, or it could be a trivia contest, it could be anything. And FFG even says that stores might be able to display a live feed from the World Championships, so this could be even more fantastic coverage than we've seen in the past. And it's looking like all of this is going to be taking place after November 6th. I'm not sure I did the best job of explaining all of that, but this is definitely something new, something interesting. I suppose for either of you two, any thoughts on this change? And I guess any plans to either attend Worlds yourselves? And if not, would you consider hosting some sort of like special tournament to celebrate Worlds?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I'm planning on attending Worlds. It comes down to finances and whatnot, but I think it was fun last year, and I'd definitely go again. I think that the change is pretty cool. As far as the 2 copies of the World Championship alt art card go, I bet you that 90% of the store championships will just put it into the prize pool and give it to the top 2 players.
Probably.
But I know, like my wife and I watch Survivor, and you sometimes you see towards the end you see the hometown of this particular person, and there's 60 people in a bar, all with the person's face on their T-shirts or whatever, and you sort of I could sort of picture something like that. You got the live stream going from Worlds, and everybody at home is cheering their national champion on or something like that.
Yeah,
it'd be pretty cool.
It makes me...
I just like the thought of a bunch of people in a bar in Toronto with your face plastered on their shirt, just sitting at a game store and watching you play.
You'd have to have a lot of faith, to make the T-shirts in advance, not knowing if your person was going to make the second day or not. And
Right.
yeah, so I don't know. I just think it's a really cool idea. It does remind me of, I think they call it bar craft, where you go to a bar or a pub and you watch competitive StarCraft or something like that. So it could potentially be pretty cool. I can't say that I see this happening in my non-existent local meta, but if I don't attend Worlds myself, I would imagine that I'll be sitting at home watching. Whether or not I'll be wearing anybody's T-shirt, I don't know. Maybe I've already ordered a couple John Gobeil shirts. I guess we'll just kind of have to see how everything ends up working out. But I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of neat that the secondary market for those Worlds promotional cards is probably going to tank just because there are going to be so many more out there. I think those Mordecai Rune Priests were something like $50 or so at first, and that Netrunner promo was like $110 or something. So,
Yep.
I don't know. I mean,
Well, maybe they want to cut down on that too. That's part of the reason to include them in these kits, is to cut down on people. I mean, whatever. People are free to do with what they want with their property, but, it does kind of, I don't know, kind of devalue the specialness of the prize when it's just up on eBay the next day.
It's a participation prize anyway, though.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
I think that it's great because I know after Worlds last year, 2015, when people started throwing those things up on eBay to pay for their trips and that sort of thing, there was a lot of people, particularly in Europe and across the the ocean, that were were really irritated that they couldn't get their hands on those sorts of things for a reasonable price, because it's not feasible for them to fly across the world to North America and go to this thing themselves. So it's kind of neat because like if you've got a play group of 16 or 20 people in your town, and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 store championships, most people are going to get a copy of it, unless there's people that hoard them all. But yeah.
I don't know. I guess as somebody with very much the collector's mindset, I really feel frustrated if there's something I do want and I'm not able to collect just every piece of swag or loot available. So I can definitely empathize with some overseas just Conquest players that really want the stuff. It's just not feasible to get their hands on. So if we've got more promos out there that people can come across and get their hands on, I think that's just a strict improvement. So I think this celebration is cool. It gets the community more involved, even if they're not able to attend the World Championship event itself. So I think this is just a strict improvement, and just like we're seeing more tournaments more often, even though there's less prize support, like those seasonal kits no longer include playmats, so they're cheaper to mass produce. All of it, I think, is good for the health of the game. So I just think it's a cool thing overall.
And plus, you've only got so much wall space for those mats anyway, so...
That is true. I guess I'd hate to have to move into a bigger apartment just to get more, wall space.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I guess with that out of the way, that you can order those upcoming store championship kits, Fantasy Flight Games Organized Play did unveil this new series of articles. The first article in that series is called What is a Tournament?, in which Organized Play explains what exactly a competitive event is. So it talks about the role of a tournament organizer, some basic things to expect as a player. It introduces the concept of winning points for winning or losing or drawing games, and it also introduces the various tournament structures like Swiss and single elimination, the different round systems, kind of what to expect as a player, a competitor, and more than anything else, it encourages players to do it for fun. There's a second article called the Championship Series, and this explains how you can go from a store champion to eventually, potentially, being a world champion. So it says that the store championship season is from November to February, and every store in good standing with FFG can essentially apply for a store championship kit, and the chances are you're going to be able to get one. This is their relaxed tier of play. You get alternate art cards, something for the top 8, the top 4, and then the tournament organizer gets an additional copy of each prize for themselves, because they're good enough to run the event in the first place, or to hand out at their discretion. We mentioned that there's also now going to be 2 copies of a World Championship alternate art card that are supposed to be given away at some sort of fun event or tournament anytime after the World Championship. And then up from store champs, you've got your regional championships. So these are in the process of going on right now. They generally take place about 2 months after store championships. They're formal. The top 64 get an alternate art card, and then you've got unique prizes for the top 16, top 8, and top 4. The tournament organizer again gets some swag, and then where things start to get really interesting is at the national level. So this is a premier level event, and instead of some standard rounds of Swiss and then kind of, a final match or single elimination thing, they've got a really complicated custom structure that, again, you can check out in the link to this article. The United States national championships are going to take place each year at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio. The top 128, top 16, top 8, and top 4 all get prizes, and if you are the winner, you get a first round bye for the World Championships. The next level up from nationals is the North American and European Championships, which I believe is new as of this year. It's another premier level event. It's got another strange, complicated custom structure of Swiss and single elimination, and then I believe like another switch back to Swiss. It's rather confusing, but again, there's going to be a link in the comments. Every participant gets a prize. The top 16, top 8, and top 4 get something special, but the first place winner, the champion, gets not only their commemorative prize and a bye for the first round of the World Championships, but they also get their full travel and accommodations covered should they decide to take part in the World Championships at Roseville, Minnesota. So your flight and your lodging is covered, and something brand new here is you actually have a chance to design a card with the developers. So this used to be an only World Champion reward, and now it looks like you'll have at least, I guess, 3 chances each year to win this. It's going to take place in August at Gen Con in Indianapolis, Indiana, and last but not least, of course, the big thing to kind of the tournament to end all tournaments is the World Championship. It's another premier level. It's a very custom structure. This last year, it was 7 consecutive rounds of Swiss, and then day 2, the top 16 all did a single elimination, but the structure is going to be announced closer to the event. I believe this year they're going to be able to allow more players to compete, so they might have to do some unconventional structure indeed. In 2016, it's looking like it's going to be November 2nd through the 6th is going to be the World Championship weekend. We don't know exactly when Conquest is going to occur, but it's at some point in there. Prizes are to be announced, but as per usual, the winner, the grand champion, the first place world champion, does get to design a card with the developers. And then in addition to everything else, there's the 4 seasonal kits per year, which is a bump up from the 3 we're used to. But that's enough of me talking for now. So Sam, what is our final article all about intentional draws?
Yeah, real quick, I had a couple thoughts here on this championship series. One is, I like that store championships are called, like, they're relaxed now, which means, like, I can legally play in my store championship because I'm also the judge or the marshal or whatever.
Right, because your meta is kind of small.
Because my meta is small. And then also, like, it used to be that if you were a national champ, they paid your airfare and stuff for Worlds, but now you have to win the European champ or the North American champs. You can't win, like, from the way this is worded, that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was every nation that had that. Like, I know it was Germany and the United Kingdom for sure,
right?
But I'm not sure if it was China or, like, the Nordic national champion or the Dutch national champion.
Right. Yeah, I don't know either, but there's that. So, but I mean, I guess the flip side is it's potentially not as many people getting flown in for free, but the winners of that get to design the card, and then of course we get the extra seasonal kit. So overall, I guess I'm good with these changes. But yeah, this intentional draw thing, I mean, it is pretty dry, and we'll link it in the show notes here. But basically, in a nutshell, this is the deal. There are times where it could be mutually beneficial to both players to take a draw as opposed to one winning and one losing. For instance, if John and I were playing in the last round of Swiss and, like, a win got one of us in and a loss got one of us out, we could agree to have an intentional draw where perhaps we both got in.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
And they explain how it's different than collusion. They explain why they do it. They said there's other ways we could have done it, but, like, we don't want to encourage people to bend the rules, because if we do, people will cheat. Like, if you give people an atmosphere in which to cheat, or it's easier to cheat or more beneficial to cheat, then it's more likely to happen. So essentially that's why they're doing this. And again, it's kind of dry, but you can read it if you want in full. But that's like the meat of it, is there's going to be times where it's more beneficial to the 2 players as a group to to get an intentional draw.
It kind of reminds me of the parent that takes the mindset like, my kids are going to drink alcohol whether I tell them not to or not, so I might as well let them do it here so that they'll be safe, or something like that. Like,
Right.
these players are going to deliberately draw, so instead of making it some like painstaking, arduous, frustrating process, why don't we just say, it's fine, if you guys want, you can draw. So
Right. And like, I mean, it's like a risk reward. Like if I sit down across from John and like we're fighting for a spot in top 8, and if I win, I could maybe place 4th, but if I lose, I'm out. Whereas if we draw, we're like 6th and 7th or 7th and 8th or something like that. So, I just don't think this is going to come up that much. Maybe it will, but I just have a
It's
feeling
come up
it won't
a lot, man.
Well, I guess that's true. I guess they've said that.
I've been following it in Thrones and heard about it in X-Wing and whatnot, and there's actually a lot of controversy about it already. Apparently in one of the X-Wing regionals, the entire top 8, like all the top 8 people in the Swiss for the last round of Swiss, all took intentional draws. And FFG's done I believe they've done another article about how they've changed it where they're going to reevaluate everything and make a judgment call on whether or not to keep them as of August 1st, I believe it is, of this year.
Yeah, and I did I see somewhere that an intentional draw, I could be totally wrong on this, and it's not in this article that I could find, but I thought I saw somewhere that an intentional draw was going to be worth less points than a regular draw.
It
But I
could
could
be.
be wrong on that.
I mean that's not going to change anything. Like the one reason people do it, like say that we're playing a 6-round Swiss tournament and you and I are both undefeated, right? If there was enough people, you going 5-1 could potentially, based on your strength of schedule, kick you out of the top 8. So
Right.
instead of going for 30 points for one of us and 25 points for the other one, we both get 27 points. So even if it is 26 points, it still puts you ahead of everybody else that's 5-1 anyway.
Right.
But the problem you run into is, like, let's say that you are probably going to make the top 8 and you want to do an intentional draw to sort of ensure that happens. Sometimes what will happen, and what's happened in one of the regionals that I was hearing about, was that there was 2 tables in the final round that took intentional draws, and only 2 of the 4 people that had, I think they had 22 points. They were 4-1-1. Only 2 of those 4 people actually made it into the top 8. So the intentional draw can be good, but it also depends on how many other people that are having a similar record intentional draw as well, because otherwise you'll end up with you'll be back to the mercy of strength of schedule again.
Right. Like, so if Table A had not have taken the draw and Table B did, Table B is thinking, well, we're golden. And then
That's
the same
right.
thing happened at Table A.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep.
And you can't really, I mean, I guess you could, no, but I mean, like, say you intentionally draw at 5 minutes into the game, you just call the judge over and say, okay, let's draw. But then, 30 minutes in, somebody else could call the judge over and be like, you know what, let's just intentionally draw. And then all of a sudden, everything's changed, right? So,
Right.
personally,
Yeah, I
for
mean,
me, it's just... Sorry? Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, personally, for me, I don't know. I never played Magic or anything like that, serious competition stuff. But for me, it's like I go to a tournament to play a tournament. And,
Right.
Intentionally drawing is cool, I guess, because it's part of it. But I'd rather just play, If
Yeah.
it comes down to, if we intentionally draw, I still might not make it, then I might as well just play you and might not make it based on my own merit, rather than just, give strength of schedule more power over you. It's already bad enough.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'd rather just, like they say in sports, just play it on the field. Like, let it be decided on the field, Like,
Yep.
it's not like in football, you got week 16 or week 17 of football, and there's 4 teams fighting for 2 playoff spots. Well, they don't just say, you know what, let's have a tie game. Like, they don't do that. They play to see who wins. So
Yep.
It's like, I'm with you. Win it or lose it on your own merit. That's kind of how I feel. I don't think. I mean, I guess never say never, but I don't see myself in a situation where I would say, yeah, I'll intentionally draw. Like, I would just want to play it out.
I probably have, well, I I definitely have the least tournament experience out of all of us, but honestly, the first thought that comes into my mind is I find it really difficult to want to do something that would benefit another player in a tournament. Like, I don't know, if intentionally drawing with someone means that they will also advance, I would just so much rather crush each and every one of my opponents, or at least attempt to, than be like, no, it's cool, we can all win. Let's, lift one another up and we'll all make it to the top 16 or whatever else.
That doesn't sound like the 41st millennium that I know. Yeah.
That's right. I'm there to win playmats, okay? Let's be real about this. That's why I'm there. And if I help someone else to steal that away from me, I just could not live with myself. So I don't know, but
well, you know what they say, in the grim darkness of the future, there is only war and sometimes intentional draws.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm even thinking of, like, Worlds, right? Like, let's say, I went on a great run, and I'm sitting there with a chance in my final game to make top cut. And I'm sitting across from, you, John. And I'm not going to say, hey, John, if we draw, we'll both make top cut. Like, no, let's just play it out. And if I lose, then I lost to John, and that's the way it goes. And good for you, and I'll wish you luck. It's just, I don't like it, but whatever.
Well, see, here's my thing is, in Worlds in particular, right? You've got, how many rounds? I think it was
7
rounds, yeah. If you're 6-1, you're fine, right? But, I can't remember how many 5 and 2s there were, but there was I think there was like 9 spots for 5 and 2s, and there was probably 25 of them or something like that. So,
right.
In that situation where the majority of people that are 5 and 2 are not going to make it, I could see if you were 5 and 1 in the last round, just saying, rather than 25 points and being at the mercy of like the 1/3 of the people that get through strength to schedule, then let's go 27 points and guarantee that we're 8th and 9th or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of the whole collusion thing comes up again, where people have some agreed upon deal. Like, when I went to the World Championships, had I been competing, I probably knew 25%, 33% of the players involved. And how easy would it be to be like, hey, Mitch, we know one another, we're internet buddies, like, why not just draw or something like that? So I don't know. It just feels weird.
Yeah, they do talk in this article about how this skates the line of collusion and what the differences are. So, like, if you, extensively discuss your intentional draw with each other prior to calling over the assistance of an event leader, that's collusion. Like, you have to have an event leader there the moment you want to discuss it. And, like, if you want to, like, delay, like, if you delay your match to, like, see the result of another match, then, like, that's also collusion. So,
right.
Yeah. But, like, how can they prove that you intentionally delayed your match?
What I'd like to know is, has anyone seen an actual draw in Conquest?
No.
Ever? I mean,
no.
In other games, I see it all the time. Like in Game of Thrones, if you both end with 10 power or whatever, sure, at the end of time or whatever. But, I mean, Jesus, in Conquest, what would a draw be? You'd have to... Did you have to both lose Planet 7? I think.
Something like that, yeah. Because
I'm pretty sure that one of the tiebreakers was something like, if everything else is still a tie, then it's whoever won the last planet wins the game.
Correct.
So you'd have to have the same number of planets won, which happen to have the same number of planet icons, and you have to have a draw on Planet 7. Like, how does that even work?
I guess it would be like, you've got a Void Pirate, I've got a Rogue Trader, after I just Tzeentch's Firestormed your last... like unit at the planet or something. Right? I guess they'd both be bloodied during the last battle.
Okay.
So
my Snakebite Thug bloodied your Warlord and then killed itself, and it was like,
then I Tzeentch's Firestormed it or something, yeah. So I would say the stars would definitely have to align for that to occur, and I don't think I've ever even heard of anyone getting a draw legitimately. So
no.
I guess even arranging a collusion style draw, I've never even heard of that. So
you'd have to stack the flop basically, in order to do it.
Yeah, I'm even looking on.
That's not gonna happen.
I'm looking on Dan Napolitano's Tableau page here that he takes from Paul's database, and there's not even a tie reported.
I believe it.
So out
How
of
many
like
games is that?
it's 6,258 games.
Yeah.
It's so improbable, right? They made it so that it was easy for you to not have a tie. There's
Right.
good tiebreakers. I mean, most games don't even get to Planet 7 without having someone win by planets first. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, out of those 6,258 games, losing it on the winning it or losing it on the last planet is 90 of those games.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
pretty small.
It's like 2% or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess if you're a listener, if you've got a strong opinion on whether or not intentional draws should or should not be allowed in Conquest, be sure to let us know in the comments, because this is definitely not an area of expertise for me. John, Sam, you guys have both got quite a bit of tournament experience under your belt, but I definitely have no opinion whatsoever. So, viewers, let me know if I should be angry at Fantasy Flight Games for establishing this rule or not. But before we jump into our Necrons, I'll just say that there is indeed an FFG Instagram account. They've got some new Death World Cycle card art, full extended HD resolution versions up there. We've got our new Nurgling. I forget if it's called the Infectious Nurgling, but there's the card art for that. There's a bright blue image of this crisp crimson red soaring falcon that looks like it's absolutely hauling ass. That's going to be an upcoming Death World Cycle card, and perhaps most interesting of all, there's actually a big, beautiful piece of orc artwork depicting a big squigoth with a supalaba. So what this is it's this like giant rhinoceros or elephantine green reptilian squigoth, this giant orcish creature. It's got all this orc armor, it's got tusks, it's got like an augmented mechanical lower jaw, it's got teeth and horns sticking out all over the place, and then it's got this like big artillery embankment like planted upon its back, and that's a supalaba that's supposed to be coming out in pack 3, or at least it's card art coming out in pack 3, which is Slash and Burn of the Death World Cycle, and just looking up what exactly that was on the Lexiconum, the 40K encyclopedia out there on the internet. I guess these squigoths, these big squigoths in particular, are fairly rare, and they can only be grown to their largest size by the specialist breeder pig docs of the snakebite clan. So we've seen snakebites like the aforementioned snakebite thug, and Death World, we know it's a jungle planet, so I guess I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see an upcoming Orcs warlord that is this breeder pigdox, or who knows what it could be. But I guess I've definitely got the Instagram account followed, and I just look forward to seeing what card art they end up putting out. They're tossing up a ton of like Game of Thrones artwork, Lord of the Rings living card game art, so I would give their Instagram a follow and just see what there is to come. But it's time to...
Is this thing called a squigoth? Squigoth?
Yeah, squigoth.
Oh, I thought you were saying squigoff. Like, let's have a squigoff, motherfucker. Like some sort of competition.
It's like a walk-off from the Zoolander.
Yeah, but a squigoff. That would be cool. That needs to be an event, an orc event. Squigoff.
Right,
I like
Squigoff. Old Zogwart would always win, but I suppose now we might as well talk about what we came here to discuss in the first place. It's time to cover our new Necron spoilers. So, John, since you're our guest, please introduce us to our first Necrons reveal article.
All right. Well, the first reveal article is called Enslave the Galaxy. And it basically goes over the first Necron warlord, which is Nahumekh. And he's a really interesting warlord that has sort of, you build your decks where you have multiple non-Necron factions, and it makes his signature squad more powerful and makes his reaction more interesting. I suppose I should start off by reading his card.
Sure.
Nahumekh is a warrior and a Sautek. He has a reaction which says, after the combat phase begins, the target army unit at this planet gets minus X HP until the end of the phase. X is the number of non-Necron factions among units you control. And what's really interesting about that is that there's nothing you can do about the minus HP. If you have a guy like an Honored Librarian, for example, with 2 hit points, and I go, that guy gets minus 2 hit points, you can't shield it, you can't Indomitable, it's not damaged, that guy just goes to 0 and he is gone.
Yeah.
He is a 2/6, and he gets 7 card and 7 resources. And so he's pretty interesting. But the question that you're coming down to is how many non-Necron factions do you include? Because that enslavement dial, which you may or may not have spoken about in the podcast previously, is a bit of a gamble. Because you can only, at the beginning of the deploy phase, you set the enslavement dial to a faction, and you can only deploy or put into play units from that faction and from the Necron faction, and I guess neutrals as well, that turn. So if you go for a deck that has like Vasha Trailblazers and Warlock Destructors and Snakebite Thugs and Rattling Deadeyes and a little bit of everything from each faction, and then you start off with 6 different factions of cards in your hand, you'll be able to put out like 2 cards in the turn and be in a bit of trouble there. I suppose I should go ahead with the rest of the cards then, or?
Well, yeah, I mean they all kind of go together, so let's go through his squad here.
All right, so his signature squad units are called Destroyer Cultists. They are 3-cost army units with 1 command icon and 1 attack, 4 hit points. The warrior is Sautek traded, and the unit gets +1 attack for each non-Necron faction among units you control. So you can get, once again, it's sort of a risk versus reward thing. You can get really interesting, and these guys could be like a 5/4 if you have enough units out. And it actually makes for some interesting choices for your opponent as well, because if you only have 1 Eldar unit out on the board, they could actually do things to take out that Eldar unit to make it so that your guys are that much weaker versus just trying to stomp you at Planet 1. And one thing to mention, of course, is that neutral units are not a faction, so they don't count towards the non-Necron factions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you mentioned there, John, is pretty interesting because having had the opportunity a few times now to see how Nahumekh actually plays is he does kind of ramp up in his power. So the first turn, the best you can do is play 1 non-Necron, so you're subtracting 1 HP, your Destroyer Cultists are attacking for 2, and if your opponent doesn't send their Warlord to deliberately trigger battles and clear out some of your units, that ability can eventually escalate to be just out of control. I was playing Guy Lev, and I had a Starbane's Council, and Nahumekh was able to show up at a planet, and as soon as the combat phase starts, he was able to just kill that unit without me being able to nullify or shield or anything else, just because I hadn't had the opportunity to keep his faction number in check. And I don't really envision there being too many scenarios where the Destroyer Cultist is like attacking for 8 if you have each of the 7 core set factions in play. But the Nahumekh Dream is absolutely terrifying. And I guess it is worth mentioning that Tyranids are not a selectable option on the enslavement dial.
Right.
I don't believe Necrons are either.
Right.
And that actually is one of my concerns about Nahumekh, and you'll see in some of his other cards, is that if you're playing against a Tyranid player, some of your cards won't work because you can't select Tyranids on the dial. So it actually gives you an advantage against Necrons in that sense.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of interesting from like a fiction standpoint where, it's the ultimate pure machine faction versus the ultimate pure, organic life faction. But yeah, it's especially once we start to talk about Anrakyr the Traveller, where you can resurrect some of your enemies' units, but you have to be able to select them on your dial. That is a pretty significant restriction.
Well,
but
even Nahumek's signature event called Hate here. It's an X-cost event.
Yes.
It's a deploy action. Destroy a target army unit with a faction symbol that matches your enslaved faction. X is that printed unit's cost. That unit's printed cost, rather. So the thing is, if I'm running a Nahumekh deck that has Space Marines and Tau in it, I'm turning my dial to Space Marines to put up my Space Marine units and be able to ambush my eager recruits in. And if you happen to also be playing Space Marines, I just killed one of your dudes in the same turn. Whereas, if you almost want to build a Nahumekh deck with the factions in it that are popular or that you expect to see because of that.
Yeah.
Whereas, if all of a sudden you're playing, orcs or something like that, and Nahumekh doesn't have any orcs in his deck, then you need to, if you have hate in your hand and you want to put out a Space Marine unit, you need to make the choice of whether to play that unit or destroy something with hate. And it's a lot easier if you could just do both.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, let's go through the rest of his pod, and then I'll give my overall thoughts here.
I was going to say, and that can bring us to his signature attachment, the Staff of Command, which is 0 cost attachment with 3 shield icons, as always. War gear weapon attached to your warlord. Action: exhaust this attachment to set your enslavement dial to another faction. This, to me, seems like something that is sort of like a Chimera Den in the sense that it is a game changer, and it's unfortunately only one per deck. However, being Necron, you can put in those juicy Earthcast technicians to search for it.
Sure.
Because, if you've got, it's really versatile. If you've got, a Space Marine you want to play, and your opponent has a nasty Tau guy that you want to play hate on, all of a sudden you can do both with the Staff of Command. Or if you've got, 2 factions worth of units in your hand that are non-Necron, you can deploy both.
Right.
So it definitely adds a lot more versatility to Nahumekh once that thing gets attached to him.
Yeah, I guess before that comes out, it's almost like you have to choose, do you want to use your enslavement dial purely offensively, or do you want to instead kind of muster your own forces? And it totally remains to be seen how exactly Nahumekh is going to build, but we've even seen previously spoiled the Mind Shackle Scarab, a 3-cost attachment where you basically affix it to an enemy non-elite, and so long as their faction symbol matches your enslaved faction, you can exhaust your attachment to gain control of that unit.
Yep.
But who knows, you might be in a really difficult situation where you've already invested heavily into resources to steal control of a unit, but it just doesn't look like it's going to work out favorably for you. Like, maybe you've got stuff in your hand that's sufficiently valuable that you end up wanting to play that instead. So I definitely think there's going to be a lot of careful finesse when it comes to building Nahumekh, and I do think it's going to be somewhat of a godsend sometime if you are paired against a faction that you're already enslaving.
Well, the other problem you have, of course, is with, as you said, with the Mind Shackle Scarab and with hate. If you're playing against Tyranids, those are just, hate is a 1 shield card.
Right.
And that's it. You can't possibly play it as an actual event.
Or if you're playing against Necrons.
Again.
If you're going up against another Necron
hopefully the
player.
Necrons would have some allies in there, but yeah, I see
Right.
your point.
Right. Because, well, we'll get into it, but I think Anrakyr could be like a mono Necron deck, theoretic. I'm sorry,
Yep.
not a mono Necron deck, but more so, he wouldn't necessarily be, but more so than this guy, so.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, yes. Okay, so the last card in Nahumek's signature squad is called Obedience, and it's the support. It's a 2-cost support. It's an upgrade, and it says reaction after a phase begins, exhaust this support to move a non-Necron unit you control to a target planet. Pretty cool. It's versatile in that it can be any phase that begins. I think you'd most likely use it for the combat phase.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have any limitations on the size of the unit or the cost of the unit or anything like that. So you could put in a big monster unit, throw it to Planet 4 to win command, and then pop it over to Planet 1 to do its thing.
I also like that, like you could win a battle at 1 uncontested because you can't fight up against what you got. You win it, and then at the start of the HQ phase, you can move a unit from your HQ to the next planet for what will be
true,
Planet
yeah.
1 on the next turn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I also like that you can kind of adjust the position of units prior to, warlord committance and resolving command struggles. So there's just certainly a lot of cool options here. 2 is pretty expensive, but movement is incredibly powerful. I wasn't a huge fan of the corrupted teleportarium until I actually saw it played, and that is just absolutely ridiculous. And having seen Nahumekh, albeit in the context of not having, I don't know, maybe we have half at most of Legions of Death spoiled, he definitely runs very heavy in regard to non-Necron cards, so I think that's going to be an awesome signature support. I just think he's probably going to need a lot more cards for that Staff of Command to really be, like, that significant. Like, I understand it in theory, I just don't think, at present, I think I might be a little bit disappointed to draw that, unless I'm really pulling in a lot of cards.
Yeah, I mean, the things I like best about him are his signature support and his signature attachment, both of which you only have one copy of, which is too bad, because, like, I can really see Staff of Command doing work, like, what John said with Hate. If you have 2 Space Marines in your hand and you're sitting across from orcs, well, you can do your Space Marine thing and then change it over to Orc and then play Hate or something. Or if you have a Space Marine and an Astra Militarum, then you can change it and get them both out in one turn. And then obviously we just talked about Obedience, but those are, like I said, those are both only 1 card each. And his reaction in of itself, like, I just don't know how many non-Necron different factions you're going to pack in a deck because of the restriction of the enslavement dial. Like, maybe 3. I'd be shocked if you went over 3. And
Yeah, I think 3 is pushing it a little bit, but it's up there.
So, like, let's say you're not getting Staff of Command on turn 1, which is likely. It's only minus 1 HP the first turn, potentially. It's only minus 2 HP the second and probably third turn, potentially. I mean, maybe you can get up to 3 by turn 3 or 4, which is good, but I don't know. And then, like, his signature army unit, the Destroyer Cultist, like, I would say on average, like, I don't know, if I had to average it out, you probably have 1 or 2 non-Necron units out at any given time in the game.
Yeah.
So it's like, this guy's a 3 cost, 1 command, 2/4. Like, and that's only conditionally. Whereas, like, Tyranid Warriors 3 cost, 2 command, 2/4. So, I don't know.
You also have the issues that, if your non-Necron units are in combat at Planet 1 with these guys, you kill them first, right?
Right. Or if your non-Necron units are weenies and they play a Nurgling Bomb or a Warp Storm or whatever, AoE 2, it's like...
Or Cannon Planet 4 where your guys...
Where your Bealtan is, yeah. Well,
and that's the thing, like you'll get into situations where you've, I'm using Space Marines as an example again, but let's say that you've got a Destroyer Cultist and, a 10th Company Scout at Planet 1, right? And you've got a Blood Angel Veteran in your hand, but you also have some command unit for a different faction. Do you play the Blood Angel Veteran out at Planet 1 because you need the beefy body, or do you and give up that that second faction for your Destroyer Cultist and for Nahumek's reaction, or do you put out the Slith Mercenary or whatever it is at Planet 5 for command so that you can up those guys? I think it depends. Like there's probably going to be, much like at the beginning of the Tyranid box, there was the people that would try to play like an infestation heavy deck for Old One Eye versus a regular Old One Eye deck. You might have Nahumekh guys that if there's a bunch of other Necron cards that are, depending on how many non-Necron units you have or factions you have, you get, AoE or whatever it is. How deep do you want to delve into that? Because it really is it's a risk versus reward thing that really can damage your consistency. And if you don't have consistency, you're not winning many tournaments.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, what do you guys think about, let's say, the Warlord as a unit himself? Like, I find it interesting that in the early game, let's say the first turn you end up playing, like, one, unit, like a Blood Angels veteran, whatever it happens to be. You can send him to a planet to do like a command snipe, but his reaction, like if you're reducing a Void Pirate from 1 hit point to 0, and then you're not attacking, like maybe there's a little bit of added defensive benefit because you can clear out something like an enemy eager recruit or a Shadowed Thorns pillager, but it just seems like in the early game, unless you're sending him to a combat situation, his ability might be a little bit underwhelming. But
Yeah, I agree. I think this guy's better the later the game goes.
Well, he there's been a number of times where someone has put out a Heretic Inventor or something like that. A 3 hit point body that happens to be somewhere for command.
Sure.
And if you can pop over there and make him, reduce him by 1 or 2 and then actually swing and kill him before he hits you for 3,
right.
it's better. But, it depends. Definitely, since Nahumek's reaction is planet dependent, you're going to want to send him into combat often. And given that he's a 2/6, which is basically the weakest body a warlord can have, they really need to have either some dangerous units to make them bigger threats to swing at, or some defensive options to keep Nahumekh alive.
Yeah, and I will say, as we're going to talk about the Gauss Flare later, an attachment which decreases hit points, there's absolutely stellar synergy there. And I guess just because Nahumekh is going to be running a lot of soldiers or warriors in his deck, kind of a theme that we've seen revealed for the Necrons is a lot of these classic traits that have seen some or no development start to become really important again. Like there's soldier synergy, there's warrior synergy, and then also scouts. The Mandragoran Immortals might be a good include with Nahumekh because they're a 3-cost, 1 command icon, 2/3 with ranged, and then you can sacrifice non-Necron soldiers to ready them, and that's only once per phase, but they're able to attack at ranged. That pairs great with his HP reduction, and then if you've got some enslaved units that are showing up at a planet, if they're soldiers, you can sacrifice those and then attack again. So there are a lot of cool little possibilities here with Nahumekh, but we, of course, don't have the full card pool to go off of, and I'm just curious to see how he actually functions based on what we've seen so far. There's so many interesting cards that work great with him, like that Sawtech Complex, a 1-cost support. It's limited, but whenever you deploy a unit from a non-Necron faction, if you control no other units from that faction, you can gain a resource or draw 1 card. With him, you want to be playing various different factions, so you're likely going to be able to trigger that multiple times, and if you're running Space Marines, you could drop an Eager Recruit in, it could fight and die, and when it does, you could ambush another Eager Recruit. You don't control any Space Marine faction units, and then you've got that Sawtech Complex activating all over again. So seems like a lot of cool possibilities, but I guess I'm just not really sure what we're gonna see with this guy. I suppose any thoughts on just overall strengths and weaknesses with this warlord?
I just think that he can bring the best of all the factions in, or I guess the non-loyal cards, but there really is a lot of risk versus reward. If all you have in your deck is Destroyer Cultists and Nahumekh that benefit from the multiple factions, then you're probably doing it wrong. But yeah, if you get yourself in a situation where me killing a 1-hit point non-Necron unit, it could potentially cripple your, or maybe not cripple, but very much influence how much damage you guys can output, or make it so that you can no longer trigger some sort of ability because you don't have 2 non-Necron factions in play, or something like that. It can really hurt your deck and how it plays. So
I guess, what are some of the units that you all might include? So a Necron's deck can include common army units from any non-Tyrannid faction. I guess the experience I've had playing against Nahumekh so far, it's been like Tactical Squad Cardenas, maybe Blood Angels Veterans, the same Han Kinsman, and Warlock Destructor, units like that, Snakebite Thug, Evil Sun's Warbiker, anything else come to mind for just some awesome includes for this dude?
Well, like I said earlier, with the staff of command, I
Right.
definitely put in some Earthcast technicians, and if you're already going to be running Tau in your deck, maybe some Vasha Trailblazers or my goodness, the Warlord groupie guys that I can't remember. Borkhans, thank you. But yeah, my first reaction when I saw the guy was like, okay, Snakebite Thugs, Warlock Destructors, let's go.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple, obviously. But it's certainly a good place to start.
And I guess very interesting to note, too, is we've not seen any 2-cost, 2-command icon Necron units so far. So you're completely reliant on, like, your Iron Guard recruits or your Trailblazers or whatever else it is that you're going to drudge up from other factions.
Right.
But on the other hand, they have the most access to most cheap 2-command icon units in the entire game.
Sure.
You know, the fact that you can borrow from Dark Eldar alone gives you access to plenty of them, and then you can take, whoever else you like too. So
yeah, so a lot of cool possibilities. And I guess speaking of Dark Eldar, like Incubus Warrior and Slith Mercenary are both warriors, and that's going to be important once we talk about Anrakyr. But I guess why don't I just introduce us to one of the first non-signature cards. So in this Enslave the Galaxy article, we saw the Gauss Flayer, and it's looking to me like this might be a staple card for Necrons, which is appropriate considering what it is. It's the 1-cost, 1-shield icon attachment. It's war gear and weapon attached to a Necron army unit. Combat action is during a battle at this planet. Exhaust attached unit to give a target enemy army unit at this planet -2 HP until the end of the phase. I like that this is an action, so you can do it even if you don't have initiative. Prior to your opponent being able to do anything, this is exhausting the unit and not the attachment. So if you can ready a unit multiple times, like that Mandragoran Immortals, you could give a unit -2 HP, then ready it, then do -2 HP again. It works great with Nahumek's ability, and again, it totally disallows any opportunity to shield, and that strikes me as awfully strong.
Yeah, I like this card. It's kind of like it's like a reverse regeneration, and it's like the staple attachment of the Tyrannid deck. Of the Necron deck, how regeneration is the staple attachment of the Tyrannid deck. And there's a good. We'll get to this Tombblade Squadron in a minute, but he seems like the ideal candidate for this. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it puts it into the range of actions for the Rotten Plague Bears, the pre-combat, pre-range damage stuff. If you're playing against a Tau player that's got a Viorla Marksman with a bunch of, ion rifles on it or something like that, you just go poop, and the ion, they're all gone.
Yep.
Before they even get to swing, so it's pretty handy.
Yep.
And I like that it's cheap too, because this is a great card to play as your last deploy action. Like you said, they've got a marksman with 2 gun drones on it, or a rattling deadeye with 2 or 3 catachans out, and then you just plop that down, and it changes the whole math of the combat, and they're like shit. So
exactly.
Yep, and I've just seen this on, I guess the most common recipient I've seen this on is a Canoptech Scarab Swarm, that 1-cost 2/2, just because you need to put this on a Necron, and really that's kind of the crappiest thing about this card is Nahumekh doesn't have a lot of Necrons at this point, so a lot of the Necron units we've seen are pretty powerful, and it just seems like you're maybe giving up a pretty decent effect just to use this really strong Gauss Flayer. But if you just got a crappy Canoptech Scarab, trading to attack from -2 hit points is a giant upgrade, and this just strikes me as a hell of a card.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that you could also look at it from the perspective of a drone defense system, in that you might even want to put it on a unit that can take a beating and last till the next round. Because if you look at it, it says that you exhaust the unit, not the attachment.
Yes.
And the army unit of that planet gets -2 until the end of the phase, which means that if I hit your guy, your 4 hit point guy, once combat round 1, when I ready up for combat round 2, that guy can go to 0 and I can kill him without even swinging at him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got somebody that's like a 1/5 or something like that, you know, then it's actually a pretty decent choice. The other thing, of course, is that, as you were saying with the Scarab Swarm, is that if you put it on a unit that doesn't have a lot of combat value other than the fact that it has the Gauss Flare on it, you know, do I want to kill that weenie guy with the Gauss Flare on it, even though it's already exhausted this round, so it doesn't happen to me next round, or if he's got some way to ready him, or do I hit the guy that's going to swing at me for 3 that I could probably kill that hasn't attacked yet, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it makes some hard choices.
It kind of like leads into this next card, this Immortal Vanguard. He's a 2-cost army unit with 1 command, 1 attack, 3 HP, soldier, and Novak. And it says each non-Necron warrior unit you control at this planet gets +1 attack and +1 HP. Like, this guy is cool in of himself because he's not hitting for much. You know, I guess you're trading 1 attack for 1 HP on the vanilla test, but he's like buffing all your non-Necron warriors, and he can only hit for 1. So like, throw the Gauss Flare on him, exhaust him, and now it leads right into what you were saying, John. It's like, do I really want to spend time attacking a 1-attack unit that's already exhausted? And he's got 3 HP, so maybe with a couple shields you can keep him alive. Mm-hmm. And his constant ability is still working after he's Gauss Flayed somebody. So I kind of like it on him too.
Yeah, there's nothing more horrifying than a 4/4 Blood Angel veteran across the board from you, so I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting that it only affects warriors. So it's like Snakebite Thug, Evil Sun's Warbiker. I think the Dire Avenger Exarch is loyal. But it just seems like the Eldar have got a lot of warriors, the Dark Eldar have got a lot of warriors, and then of course the Orcs do. So the differentiation between soldier and warrior is starting to become pretty critical. Mm-hmm. It just seems like the Immortal Vanguard is himself already quite the target. And it just seems, I don't know if I like Gauss Flare on him, just because I think he's already going to be drawing a lot of fire just to shut off that buff of his as quickly as possible.
That's true, but if they're wasting time attacking him, he's exhausted and he has 3 HP. So like, you can maybe keep him alive a little easier.
Yeah. And then when he dies, you drop in an Elysian Assault team and smack some guy around.
Yeah. And the Necrons have got their reanimation protocols. If you've got a Harbinger of Eternity anywhere on the board, you can use reanimation protocols as an event from your discard pile. So there's a lot of cool stuff. But the Immortal Vanguard, just like Taliesin Farinal and the Steel Legion Chimera to a lesser extent, the Steel Legion Chimera is pretty idiot-proof to use, but it just seems like a little bit tricky. I guess the frontline Ardboys is maybe what I was thinking of. Like, there's a little bit of finesse required to when you throw the Vanguard out onto the table.
Well, they're just like any unit that has Hive Mind keyword on it, right?
Yeah.
Like the little guys that give the Termagant tokens +1 attack.
Yeah, the Strangler Brood.
They're little weenies, and maybe they attack with them first, and then do you want to attack the Strangler Brood that is already exhausted? Or, I mean, in most cases, in this particular case, you would anyway, but depending on how many Termagants are out, but it puts your opponent to the test, right? So.
Yeah, and I think that's what Nahumekh is all about. Do you want to go for the Warlord, or do you want to make sure that he doesn't get a million different, enslaved factions? But I guess, John, why don't you introduce us to our big, scary Necron elite?
Is this the Doomsday Arc here?
Yes, sir.
All right, the Doomsday Arc is a 6-cost army unit. 2 command icons, 5 attack, 5 hit points. It's a vehicle, it's elite. It has no war gear attachments, as all vehicles have, basically. It has area effect X, where X is the number of non-Necron factions among the units you control. And that could be pretty gross. Once again, if you've got, 3 non-Necron factions out, doing AoE 3 is pretty nice. It could get bigger than that, but it's basically an expensive vicious bloodletter that has command icons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's pretty decent.
I don't know if I like this guy. Like, on average, he's AoE 2 probably. And I don't know if I want to pay $6 for AoE 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at these cards and I just can't help but think, if they replaced the S at the end of factions, if they replaced that with the word unit, Because if the card read X is the number of non-Necron faction units among units you control, like that would change it, because then you could throw in the neutrals. Like that would be the big difference for me. But that's not how it's written, so not how it's written.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I've never seen the Doomsday Arc do anything too particularly great. I know any instance of area effect can really be a big game changer, even if it is only 1 or 2. That can definitely change a whole hell of a lot. If it's an elite, it's going to be immune to deception. If you do end up running backlash, that could be like a guaranteed-ish victory condition. Like, if you can basically guarantee that your opponent's not going to be able to remove your Doomsday Arc from a location, that could be a pretty powerful card. Maybe it's like a couple copies, but I don't know. I'm not blown away by it, but it seems okay.
There's one thing that you're not considering also. What happens when you don't have any non-Necron factions you control? AoE 0.
I mean, he's hitting for 5, but you just paid $6 for that, so
Exactly. I got a lot cheaper stuff that can hit for 4 or 5.
Yeah, that Evil Sun's Warbiker alongside an Immortal Vanguard can swing for 5, so I'd prefer cost 2 to cost 6 any day, so I don't know. It's an interesting card, but I'm not quite sold on it. But Sam, you mentioned the Tombblade Squadron before. I guess what is worth noting about those?
Well, it is a 3-cost, 2-command, 0/3 vehicle and soft tech traits, no warrior attachments. Reaction: after you deploy a non-Necron scout unit, move this unit to a planet. Then a target non-warlord unit at this planet gets -1 HP until the end of the phase. So when I looked at this at first, I didn't think there was much that was noteworthy about it. But then I saw that proxy game on your channel that when Guy was running this, and dude, he put this thing to work. Like,
yeah,
it was going all over the place, zapping command units, and it was moving like during the deploy phase from his HQ to a planet, and now he's killed a guy and he's trumped him on command. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he just had a great hand to make this guy look good for that one game, but it did some really cool work.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can. It's like Incubus Warrior is immediately killed, so a 2-command icon unit is now dead. Just like you said, this can move from the HQ. Void Pirate, Rogue Trader, Recon Drones are also gone. Splintered Path Acolyte we saw destroyed a couple times. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about Anrakyr shortly, but something he's able to do is resurrect units from a discard pile, and when that is a scout, and you're guaranteed to be able to put a scout into play at least one every single turn, that works out pretty well with making sure that your opponent's rogues and voids are not safe at all. So I think it's a very cool little effect. You can't, move to the same planet that you're already positioned at, but if you're laying down a ton of non-Necron scouts, I suppose it's possible that you could kind of jump back and forth and potentially hit the same unit from -HP more than once during the same phase.
You can even put the Gauss Flare on this guy.
Well, it's no war gear.
You can't, actually.
Oh, no war gear. Ah, damn.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if you could, because that would be the ideal target for it.
Yeah,
since it has 0 attack anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I was just looking at scouts. There are not that many scouts in the game. Most of them are in Tau. But just to name a few: Vjorla Marksman, Vasha Trailblazer, Samhan Kinsman, Salem Pioneer, Rattling Deadeye. I mean, you could definitely do it, but are you going to build a scout deck around this guy? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know. Guy Lev did a pretty good job with it, but he was playing the next warlord we'll go over and not Nahumekh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think, Guy did kind of play scout heavy because he had 3 copies of the same Han Kinsman, which at a green planet is a 2/2 for 1 command icon for 1. That's definitely not too shabby. And then he also ran Eldar Survivalists, and he kind of made those work just because he was able to choke his opponent's economy so strongly. Because you could put the Survivalists where you intend to send your warlord, and then the Tombblade Squadron can go wherever you need need it. So it's a cool little card. It was definitely something I thought was going to be complete garbage and really ended up taking me by surprise. So this was a delight to actually see. But I guess just in conclusion, anything else to share about any of these 4 non-signature cards or anything else about Nahumekh before we move on to Anrakyr?
Well, I mean, Gauss Flare looks kind of like the winner to me. And Nahumekh could be good. I got to see more. I got to play test with him because Anrakyr, to me, like he jives my Jimmy. That's the Necron Warlord I want to play. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, I guess, Sam, why don't you do us the honors of, introducing the warlord associated with the preview article, Wake These Sleepers.
All right, this is Anrakyr the Traveller. He is a Games Workshop property, I suppose, as far as the character goes.
Right.
He is a soldier, and he has the deploy action. Deploy the topmost unit card in a target discard pile. Limit once per phase. I don't know. I really like this guy. He's a 2/7 with 7 resources, 7 starting hand card size. At first I was like, well, on turn 1, his deploy action ability is going to be kind of worthless. But, there are times that your opponent does end up with units in the trash during deploy, like Splinter Path Acolyte or, whatever might happen. But he's got ways to, mill his own deck to his benefit. So it's kind of like, you can mill your own deck and get some units out, and then you kind of extend your hand size. So, yeah, I like him, and I like his whole pod. So we can move on to that because in a vacuum he's just okay, but I like him with this whole pod here.
Yeah. Well, I suppose why don't you introduce us to some of those?
Sure. Next up, we've got the Pyrian Eternals. They are his signature army unit, and you have 5 of them in his signature squad, and they are 2 cost, 1 command, 1/1. So that kind of stinks on its own, but it's got the soldier trait, and then it says for each card named Pyrian Eternals in your discard pile, this unit gets +1 attack and +1 HP. So, I think early game this guy might stink, but as you mill your own deck or as these guys die, you can put 1 or 2 of these out on, the final big battle, and they can be 3/3s or maybe even 4/4s or something like that. So,
just don't put them all out at Planet 1 and take AoE 1.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
Don't do that. That would be bad.
Yeah. But I guess this is a kind of interesting unit. I've seen it get up to just being a 3/3, but Anrakyr is all about filling his discard pile where you don't really care if you're discarding a lot of cards. They kind of serve as a natural extension of your hand. So you're drawing cards that you can put into play. They're deriving benefit from cards that you've kind of already churned through. And then based on what the topmost unit is of your deck, you're able to bounce that back to place. There's just a lot of pretty cool stuff going on with Anrakyr, and the Pyrian Eternals, I don't think you're necessarily going to see them where they're that, 5/5 with a command icon for the cost of 2 very often.
No.
But I feel like it could happen ever so often, and having them as a 3/3 or a 4/4 definitely isn't unheard of. They're not exactly the most ridiculous unit I've ever seen, but they're totally respectable, and they seem to, they just serve they provide a nice, strong foundation for an already combat-savvy warlord.
Yeah, I think most often they'll be 2/2s or 3/3s,
Yeah.
I'd pay 2 for a 3/3 with a command icon any day.
Yeah. It's pure value. I can't really find anything wrong with it, and it's a soldier, so there's your Elysian assault team. I guess just make sure that you've got your enslavement dial set to Astra Militarum, just in case you are counting on those assault teams to help you out.
Well, even if you aren't, if you've got nothing else to deploy that turn that isn't Necron, you can always bluff and put it to Space Marines for an eager recruit or something like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think that's going to be really important too, is you could trick your opponent, like in your opening hand, if you don't get whatever your allied faction is. Maybe there's, like, let's say there's a Dark Eldar Anrakyr build and there's a Space Marines build. Maybe you bluff and you set your enslavement dial to the opposite build just to trick your opponent. So a lot of cool mind games that bit of information opens up.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got the Slumbering Tomb. One copy of this. It's a signature support, 1 cost, location. Action, exhaust the support to draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand. I really like this because, like, even if you weren't trying to feed your discard pile to, like, power up the stuff you have on the table, like Anrakyr is going to do, there are times you have 2 cards in your hand that are completely worthless to the situation. And now you get to, like, draw 2 more cards and then trash the 2 that you don't need, or maybe you trash 1 you do need and put it on top, and then that way you still have access to it. So I like this too, and for 1 cost, it seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's just a straight up way to improve the quality of the cards in your hand. You draw 2 and then you discard 2. So if you get a couple copies of your Pyrean Eternals, maybe you decide to keep them, maybe you keep 1, maybe you discard the other, knowing that the first one that you play is going to be all the stronger. Just like you said, Sam, maybe you strategically position something nice that you want to be able to deploy action, put into play through Anrakyr's ability at the top of your discard pile, and I just think it's great. The Canoptech Scarab Swarm can return discarded Necron units to your hand, so it just seems like the more you're able to just fill up your discard pile with stuff, the more you're able to feed into this Necron reanimation, resurrection, just combo and synergy playstyle, and it just seems like a fantastic support, and it's an action, so it deploys stalls. So
yeah, nice too.
Nothing really not to like.
Yeah, next up we've got the Pyrean War Scythe. It is a 1 cost, 3 shield signature attachment. War gear and weapon. Attached to your Warlord, he gets +1 attack, and then reaction after attached unit is declared as an attacker, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. I mean, I like this because, you know, it's not often that Warlords get to hit for 3. And then the reaction's cool too because, again, you can just mill your own deck to, you know, power stuff up or, you know, increase your hand size. So pretty cool.
This
and
guy's
I love the art. The art is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This guy's also a 2/7, so I think he's one of the very few 7 hit point warlords that can hit for 3. The other 2 mostly being Kato and War, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. And isn't Can Old One Eye hit? No, he gets +1 HP. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, and War has only got the 6 hit points.
Yeah, as does Kato. So this might be like the first potential like 3/7 that we see.
I guess Taliesin can be a 3/7 with her signature Autarch Power Sword.
Right.
But I can't think of any other. Like Colonel Strachan can't equip his own signature attachment, I don't believe.
No, and I think it doesn't give 1 hit point. I don't remember.
It gives just +1 attack.
Oh, okay.
And he's only a 2/6.
Yeah, and he can't because it's when the unit leaves play, and Strachan never leaves play.
Yeah. So I just think this is great. Discarding cards, generally it's not bad. I guess if you really need to make sure that the top card of your discard pile is known to you, then you don't trigger the optional reaction. But under most circumstances, I think just go for it. And just like you said, Sam, the artwork, which depicts Anrakyr with his giant, like, power scythe cutting an ultramarine in half, like, through its torso while it's just firing its bolter ineffectually into the air is just absolutely gorgeous. And man, it's good to see his...
Best part about the art for me, it's not an orc or an Astra Militarum unit dying.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's great seeing a Space Marine getting what's coming to him on a card.
That's right.
So absolutely fantastic. But
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's finish our signature squad.
Yeah, last up we've got the 1 cost event, Awake the Sleepers, 1 shield, tactic, action, shuffle any number of Necron cards from your discard pile into your deck. Now there's only 1 copy of this in the signature squad. We've lost 1 event for 1 Pyrean unit, but this is obviously a very powerful card for $1. It's like, yeah, just reload your deck. Like, oh, I'm getting low, or man, I wish I had some of these guys back in the deck
I've almost
to draw.
decked myself.
Yeah, exactly. This is very cool.
And then, of course, you have the problem when you trigger the War Scythe's reaction and Awake the Sleepers gets discarded. You're like, no!
Yeah, yeah.
Or
That's
Eldrath or an
like
Eldar
burying
Warlord
3
nullifies it.
Indomitables with the EZT or something. Yeah, it's
Yep.
horrible.
Well, I guess maybe I'm just kind of missing something, but I was not blown away by this event. Like, Necron cards is nice because it can be your reanimation protocols and everything else, but I don't know. I feel like this is going to be okay. I guess I'm just not totally wowed by it. Like, Necron units being returned to your deck doesn't quite blow me away. I could see wanting to return Gauss Flayers, but especially because you're going to be cycling through so many cards just to see them ending up discarded again. I guess I'm just not really sure what to think about this card.
Well, I think 2 things. I think 1, it's a failsafe, right, to
Sure.
keep you from decking yourself. But 2, if your deck is thin, let's say you've got, I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, it might not be common, but it's not uncommon to, get to that 6th or 7th planet and only have, 12, 13 cards left.
Oh, sure.
And if you can choose which cards you want to take out of the trash and shuffle back in,
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
you're increasing like the odds of getting those back.
Right.
More so than if, like you don't have to take all the X or all the, all the units or all the events or whatever. It's just you choose which cards you want to put back in.
Yeah, that makes it
Yeah.
very
And sure,
powerful.
you might shuffle them all to the bottom, but the chances are you're not going to. So, maybe you can, get some stuff for like, you do this the turn before the big, final bloodbath turn or something. So
You might only have 1 card left, and then just put all your 2 shield cards back into your deck, and then draw them all off command and be like, okay, final battle, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
just reload it on shields. So have fun with that.
Right. Yeah, you totally could. You could just dramatically improve the card quality within your remaining deck. And just because I'm not sure if we did mention it right at the outset, just to make sure it's abundantly clear for the viewers, I know you did say it, Sam. What's odd about Anrakyr the Traveller here is he has 5 copies of the Pyrean Eternals, the signature army unit, and just 1 copy of his signature event. But I will say, because he's going to be filling the discard pile, a lot of people thought the support we saw in the Legions of Death preview article, Particle Whip, a lot of people thought that was garbage, but for the cost of 3, it's a support, it's artillery and upgrade, and headquarters action. You exhaust that support and you shuffle any number of unit cards from your discard pile into your deck to deal X damage to a target non-elite army unit, and X is the number of cards shuffled into your deck. So I guess, do you guys picture that being very viable with as many cards as he might be able to, load into your discard pile? Like, it doesn't even have to be Necron units that you're putting into your deck, but like, I guess, let's say if the Pyrean War Scythe, if you're adding 2 cards to your discard pile, if you've got Slumbering Tomb, that's up to 4 cards discarded, I guess, every round, more if you can get off more War Scythe attacks, but I don't know.
It's a tricky one. It has some advantages. In card games, being able to shuffle your deck on command can definitely help in some situations, and this would allow you to do that, even if you just put 1 card back into your deck just to shuffle it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's it's not going to work in Necrons, but say you drop potted twice, or there was something like that, where you've just put 4 of your best cards down at the bottom of your deck. Now you can go, okay, let's shuffle those around.
Yeah.
And we'll see them again sooner. But with the effectiveness of the Particle Whip, it really depends on what is going on. Like if there are cards, like Nahumekh has cards that benefit from the non-Necron factions being in play. But if there are cards that Anrakyr has benefit from the number of cards or units or whatever that's in his discard pile, then taking them from your discard pile and putting them back into your deck actually creates a disadvantage somewhere else.
Right.
So it's hard to say. And then of course, if you've got 8 resources and 15 cards and you can only afford to put in 2 units, shuffling more units into your deck isn't going to help. You want to see those events and things with shields because you've already got too many units in your hand already.
Yeah.
So it's decent. It's non-unique. I don't know how many times you want to do that or how many times you could do it. That's the one thing. If the more you use this or the more you use it for, like the more cards you shuffle into your deck for, the less effective you've made it next turn and the turn after that.
Right.
I guess I will say I like that it's a headquarters action in that if the top 5 unit cards of your deck are not what you're wanting to use his deploy action to put back into play, you could shuffle those into your deck to deal damage, and I like that it's pinpoint damage. It's a bit of a shame that it's not like straight up HP reduction. I think that would make it monumentally more powerful.
That'd be gross.
But it's definitely an interesting card. I definitely don't envision it being 3 copies, but maybe a couple to experiment. Maybe it's just kind of janky, but we're going to be talking about recycle in a little while, and that's something else that could work pretty well with Anrakyr here. I guess just to talk about this warlord himself, what I really like about his deploy action is we were talking in our Facebook group the other day. It was the 3 of us plus Parker Ince, Travis McDaniel, and who am I forgetting? Guy Lev.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, like, Mystic Warden, you could use that every turn from the top of your discard pile, throw it at the first planet, and it's a 0-cost 2/2 that you can always rely on. You can have a Warlock Destructor for the cost of 2 resources be a 3/4. Maybe it goes to planet number 1, and it's an extremely cost-efficient unit. Maybe you win that planet, the Destructor goes to your HQ, and instead of paying that resource for it to arrive at a planet exhausted alongside your Warlord, you just allow it to be discarded, and then for 2 resources instead of 1, it's fully healed and ready at whatever planet you'd like. So
yeah, it's like a built-in better Craft World gauge.
yeah,
but that's assuming that your opponent contests the first planet every turn, which they may not.
Sure, but
Well, even if they don't, you just don't pay the resource.
Yes,
Like
that's
you
true.
just don't pay the resource, let them go to the trash, and then
That's a good point, yeah.
deploy them. Yeah.
But then you've got yourself having to set your enslavement dial to Eldar every turn.
right.
Well, maybe you just pack with, like, I don't think Anrakyr is going to be as non-Necron faction ally heavy as
It's true.
Whatever his name is, Nahumekh. So I think, like, what if you just ran Eldar, or like in the Mystic Warden case, you just ran, Astrofel Tarm. So
Yeah.
Well, then you better hope that you're not packing any Mind Shackle Scarabs, I suppose.
Or like a Guy was doing, he was on Rakir with really heavy Eldar allies, and he was using the Tombblade Squadron and continually recurring the same Han Kinsman as a scout, so it bounces into play, and then the Tombblade Squadron goes and kills off economy units or cultists. So there's a lot of really cool possibilities, and I'm just really curious to see how things end up going for both of these characters, I guess. But before we kind of talk about our 2 Legions of Death Necrons, which hopefully are only a few weeks away, let's talk about the non-signature cards. So Sam, go through the Deathmark Assassins.
all right, Deathmark Assassin. They are a 3-cost army unit. They have no command, 2/3. So a little below the vanilla test there, but they are a scout, and they have the reaction after the combat phase begins. Discard the top card of your deck. This unit gets plus X attack until the end of the phase. X is the printed cost of the discarded card. I really like that it doesn't have to be like a unit. It could just be so like whatever it is, you're gonna get it. Yeah. Even if it's a 1-cost card or a 2-cost card, now he's a 4/3 or a 3/3 or maybe a 5 or 6/3. There was a card that worked this exact same way in Warhammer Invasion, and it was bonkers good. It was kind of like an elite, but it was bonkers good, and I really like this guy.
Seeing you guys just found a good use for the Doomsday Arc. When you discard that, he becomes an 8/3, and you smack a Warlord around.
Yeah, all right, sure. I'll pack a Doomsday Arc just for that.
Now you have to put 2 in just for that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is the dream, but then it becomes like a giant target for pinpoint removal. And I guess I've seen this used very limited, just in a couple games I've witnessed, and it was like I think the highest I've ever seen it was like a 4-3. So certainly the ceiling is ridiculous. And if you've got reanimation protocols, it's a 3 hit point unit, so you could strip a couple of points of damage off of it. If you've got your resurrection orb that you can discard as shields or whatever other 2 shielders that the Necrons get, it could be a pretty damn decent unit. It's not the most expensive thing out there, and it could hit rather hard, so it's kind of cool. It's a scout, but because it's a Necron, it doesn't work with the Tombblade Squadron. I guess I just think it's worth mentioning that if you are running like the Harbinger of Eternity, or any kind of Necron elite, well, the Harbinger of Eternity is the only elite that's eligible for it, but if you're actually trying to use the Resurrection Orb, the only way that that can work is, like, I'll just introduce the card. It's a 2-cost attachment, it's War Gear, you attach it to an elite Necron unit, and reaction, after a combat round at this planet begins, if the topmost card of your discard pile is a non-elite Necron unit, you put it into play at this planet, and if you get unlucky with what the Deathmark Assassins dumps onto the top of your discard pile, it might completely shut off your Resurrection Orb, whereas Anrakyr does have some cards which allow you to kind of determine the specific order of your discard pile. So it's definitely a compelling card. I think it could be really, really strong, but I'll just be really curious to see how it fares in practice as opposed to just pure theory.
Right. Yeah, sure.
It's just more inconsistency.
All right, so next up we've got the Decaying Warrior Squad. He is another no command unit, but he's 2 cost, 2 attack, 2 HP warrior, and then combat action, deploy this card from your discard pile at a planet. So no command is a little sticky, but the fact that, like, you know, you increase Anrakyr's hand size when this guy's in the trash because you can do the topmost card and this guy.
Yeah.
So now you've got like 2 eligible targets in your trash, and I like that.
Keep in mind, too, that since deploying it as a combat action essentially is ambush, you're not really going to care that it doesn't have a command icon.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I guess the first time you put it into play, you might, but...
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. This is, I think this is a really cool card. I like that since you can play it from your discard pile, if it's late in the game and you've just got a giant stockpile of resources, instead of like, well, I've only got 3 eager recruits in my hand, it's like, I've got a copy of Decaying Warrior Squad that I can play 15 times. Like, I'm just going to keep putting it into play until I completely exhaust everything. Because even though I don't have a ton of play experience, there's been quite a few games as Broderick War or whomever where I get to that final combat round and it's like, well, I've got 8 or 9 resources and I don't have anything to spend them on. And if you've got these Decaying Warrior Squads, like, granted, they're not going to be a priority target for your opponent to destroy, but if you've got some attrition battle going on, they look like they could be absolutely fantastic. Or if you can just opportunistically use them, like you're fighting at Planet 1 and they end up being killed, and then at a subsequent battle at Planet 2 or 3, you can return them to play to augment your forces there. That seems really cool. If you've got your reanimating warriors that are fighting at like Planet 1, they get destroyed, they respawn at planet number 2, and then the Decaying Warrior Squad joins them. This could make it pretty difficult for your opponent to kind of keep track of, like, just how many Necron units am I going to have to kill how many times during the same round.
Right.
Well, and keep in mind, too, that the combat action is not limited. It's limited by your resources. So, you know, your warlord goes to planet 4, kills a void pirate, I drop the warrior squad in, hit you for 2. Next combat round, you kill the Decaying Warrior Squad. If I don't shield it, it dies. I pop it back in for 2, smack your warlord again. Like, if I've got 8 resources, not that happens that often, but you could really annoy or bloody a warrior with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, Mitch, you're right. There's times where, especially the last battle, or whatever, you've got more money than you have cards to spend it on. So why not, dump your final, if it's the last battle, dump your final 6 resources into playing this guy 3 times. So.
Well, that's one of the things that I think that I'd like to see more in the game is events and things that scale like Zinch's Firestorm does. If you've got more money, you can make them more effective.
Right.
Whereas, in some cases you've got 2 cards or they're all units and you're in combat and you've got 11 resources and you can't do anything with them, or you can, put in like an eager recruit and that's it because you're out of cards. Whereas if you could pay like 6 to ambush the eager recruit and make it a 4/4 or something like that, it's much more versatile.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and then I suppose last but not least, Sam, why don't you cover Recycle?
Yeah, Recycle. It's a 1-cost event with 1 shield. It is a power trait, and it has the action discard 2 cards from your hand, then draw 3 cards. Yeah, I really like this. It's kind of like his, it's his support. It kind of does this similar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is cool. You could have 3 copies of this, and it's a little different in that in this case you have to discard 2 first, then draw 3. Whereas like with his support, you draw them and then discard. But again, like I said with the support, there's times you have cards in your hand that for whatever reason the situation calls for, they're not going to be that good. And here you can swap them out for potentially 3 better cards, or at least just even if they're not all better, maybe just 1 more card. So and you're feeding that discard pile to get his stuff going. So I like it.
It's also an action, so it's a bit more versatile in that regard.
Yeah, you can stall with it.
The problem that you'll see in the card is that the discard, because it has the word then in it, if you cannot satisfy the first the pre-then, then the post-then doesn't happen. So if you've only got 1 card in your hand, or like say you have Recycle and another card, and that's it, you can't play it because you have to be able to discard 2.
Yeah. But I think under any sort of like ideal or good condition, you're just able to dramatically increase the card quality of your hand. Maybe you discard a copy of Decaying Warrior Squad and Purian Eternals, and then maybe you draw 3 2-shield cards or something like that. Like, who knows? But it just strikes me as a very card game card for minimal investment. Really, with Anrakyr, there's no downside whatsoever, and even with Nahumekh, you're still standing to improve just the tier, like the relevance of the cards that you're holding in your hand. If you've got a couple of copies of Hate and you're up against Tyranids, discard your essentially useless copies of Hate. So,
or say you've got 2 Space Marine units and 2 Orc units turn 1, and a bunch of Necron cards other than that. You can go, okay, well, given the Orc units that I have this turn and who I'm playing against, the Orc units are the more viable cards for this round. So I'm going to recycle, get rid of the Space Marine units, and maybe I'll pull another Orc card that I can put into play, or something that can help my Necrons or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Mitch, I think it's like the dream play, right? If you have like 1 Purian Eternal and 1 Decaying Warrior Squad, that's like the ideal situation for this thing.
Sure. So it just screams Anrakyr, and I don't know. I've not played a lot of different card games, but it seems like something along these lines always crops up. Like in Lord of the Rings, there's a card called Darren's Runes, which is really familiar to this, and even in just like party games like Flux, there's, draw 3 and play 2 of them and all sorts of stuff like that. So strikes me as a really cool card, probably another Necron staple. So now that we've seen Anrakyr, we've seen Nahumekh. Again, this is all in the context of having maybe half of Legions of Death spoiled, so there's a lot of, as of yet, unrevealed cards to alter our opinions. But for the two of you, let's start with Sam, and I guess I already know the answer to this, but are you leaning more on Anrakyr or more Nahumekh, and why?
I think just at first blush, I'm leaning more on Anrakyr. I'm more familiar with this playstyle because it's more similar to how the Undead worked in Invasion, which was the previous LCG I was into. And I like, and even if I wasn't familiar with it, I just like it. Just in theory, I like that. I like that style, that option. I mean, just like what we brought up with the Mystic Warden or the Warlock Destructor. That seems cool. Like Guy demonstrated in your proxy game. Just bringing back the scouts to get that whatever that guy's name was. What was it? I'll find it. The Tombblade Squadron to get him flying around. And even like you could play Caius Roth, and then like if they end up finally one time killing them, it might be a turn or two later, and by then they maybe have built up their hand again if they're winning command, and you just play them again. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think I just like Anrakyr, and maybe Nahumekh better, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but at first blush, I like Anrakyr.
Yeah. You can also use his deploy action on your opponent's hand, the opponent's discard pile too. So.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, I like that too.
And I can't believe we didn't mention Inquisitor Caius Roth earlier, just because if it's all detriment to your opponent having to discard a bunch of cards, and you've got stuff like Decaying Warriors that you could care less if you've got them in your hand or not, it just seems like Inquisitor Caius Roth is a perfect inclusion for Anrakyr, and he doesn't even penalize you for your enslavement dial decision. So he strikes me as superb. But, John, how about you, Anrakyr or Nahumekh?
I would love to say Nahumekh, but I can't. I like Anrakyr much better, personally. I mean, he's got a better stat line. His deploy action isn't going to see as much play as Anrakyr's reaction does. But I just think that he's stronger in general. It's not so much his squad versus Nahumekh, but I think it's just that the deck is going to play more consistently because it's not relying upon having 3 or 4, however many different Necron or non-Necron factions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also with Smash a Gun Battery becoming a thing, you can be like, discard my hand, whoop whoop.
Yeah, that's a great point too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's actually becoming a thing, but it could.
Well, it's at the very least currently undergoing its like flavor of the month experience.
Right.
So maybe last month it was the Eldorath vehicles. Maybe now we're on to the Smash a Gun Battery. But I don't know. It just seems like Anrakyr screams finesse and refinement and control, and then Anrakyr is more like brutish and just a little bit combo reliant, and if all the stars align, he is incredibly powerful, but I think he has much more opportunity for your opponent to really shut you down and deny you. Like Tzeentch's Firestorm drops my number of factions from 3 to 2, and then during combat it drops from 2 to 1, and then something else happens and my warlord gets weaker and weaker and weaker, whereas it seems like Anrakyr really just builds up over the course of the game to be extremely powerful. So I'm excited for everything Legions of Death, but it seems like we're all looking forward more so to Anrakyr. But we do have one unit for each of the 8 other factions, which all work better with an out-of-faction warlord. So we had like the Standard Bearer, who if you do not have an Astra Militarum warlord, it gets some sort of more powerful effect. So except for our Tyrannid, the Swarmling Termagants, those are all going to be Necron eligible, and maybe those are going to be stellar for Nahumekh. So I'll be really curious to see what's next. But Fantasy Flight Games has released so many articles. We also had War Pack 4 of the Death World cycle unveiled. The War Pack itself is called Searching for Truth. And what's interesting about the Death World cycle thus far is it seems like the packs all follow the theme of featuring artwork of the faction that the pack's warlord belongs to, but it's a non-signature, non-warlord, well, I guess, never mind. So Jungles of Nektivus features a Lictor, and we don't know what that card is. Pack 2 has some Salamanders, Space Marines, and the Warlord is a Space Marine. Pack 3 has Grigory Maxim, the Astra Militarum faction Warlord, and then this fourth pack has Illuminor Szeras, which is a Necron Warlord, but it features like a Necron faction card that does not exist in his signature squad. So I don't know if that's some sort of weird theme or not. But we've got our third Necron Warlord revealed. Illuminor Szeras is, of course, unique. He's Scholar trait. He is a 1/8. He starts with 7 cards in hand and 6 starting resources. So I guess right off the bat, I'm not tremendously impressed with the fellow, but his reaction is after you remove any amount of damage from a Necron army unit you control, gain 1 resource. No limit per phase, no limit per round. So, at present, we've got scarcely few healing effects available. There's reanimation protocols, and there's reanimating warriors. And reanimation protocols is a zero-cost event, and you can pull 2 points of damage off of any Necron unit, but it's a limit 1 per round. And then Reanimating Warriors is a 3-cost army unit with 1 command icon, 2 attack, and 2 hit points. It's a warrior, and when it's destroyed by taking damage, you remove all the damage from it, which means you gain 1 resource, and then you move that unit to an adjacent planet instead, and that's a limit once per phase. And then the only other healing effect is Iridial, but I guess starting with you, Sam, what do you think about this 1/8?
Well, 8 is nice. I mean, 8 HP on a Hail Warlord I don't think we've seen yet, so that's good. I don't know why he only starts with $6 and not 7, but I guess there's reasons for that. Like you say, there's not a lot of damage removal yet, but I'm sure they'll come out with some, right? Like, I'm sure that's going to be a thing. And so I like the theory of it. I like the fact that there's no limit. I like the fact there's no limit to it, and you can get as much bucks as you can remove damage. The one thing I don't understand, this guy looks like a bucktooth mechanical horse. I don't know. I don't looking at the artwork. I don't get this thing.
Yeah,
he just looks like he looks like a machine, not a dude.
Well,
I guess all Necrons are machines, but
yeah, so the thing about Szeras is he's actually a pre-established character in the 40K canon. I guess he's just kind of obsessed with unraveling the mysteries of life. To quote the Lexiconum here, I guess he's got the ultimate goal of becoming some sort of god. So he's just fascinated with just the ancient technological marvels of the Necrons race. And that's kind of it. He just wants to unravel all the mysteries of life and figure it all out and potentially ascend to godhood. But yeah, he's definitely some sort of like amalgam of just mechanical parts all cobbled together like a big Centaurian spider creature.
Right.
He's a scary looking dude.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't want to sit down across the dinner table from him. That's for sure.
Yeah. But I guess I will just speak to what you were saying, Sam. There's not a lot of healing effects now, but we haven't seen all of Legions of Death. It's not as if the final Gambit is going to include any Necron cards, but this is starting to be a long ways away now that this is Pack 4. So
right, we'll see. We'll probably see some stuff.
Yeah,
right?
I would say at least we'll probably get a minimum of 6 Necron cards to help him out, probably something more like 7 or even 8. So there could be some pretty significant repeatable healing effects in that, and because there's no cap to his ability, that could get extremely strong extremely quickly. So I'm not ready to, I guess, stomp him quite yet for this giant mechanical spider.
Yeah, and that could be one of the reasons why he starts with $6 instead of 7, because there's going to be ways for you to just start generating money fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
well,
then again, they didn't penalize Kato that way, but whatever.
One thing that I think is that he's another warlord that is not dependent on. He doesn't have to be at the planet. So one of the biggest weaknesses for Kato for me is that if you send him to snipe command or something like that, you're not getting any. You could be missing out on 3 or 4 resources that you could get when your army units destroy enemy units at Planet 1 or something along those lines. whereas this guy can, snipe command at planet 4 and still be gaining resources to pay for decaying warrior squads or whatever they are to be deployed from their dead pile, or sorry, their discard pile and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial. And then, of course, as we'll see soon, he has a way of becoming a 2/8, which is pretty darn good too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I guess to just go on through his signature squad here, he's got 4 copies of the Augmented Warriors. It's a 2-cost army unit with 1 command icon, 2 attack, 4 hit points. It's a soldier, but it has the forced reaction. After this unit enters play, deal it 2 unpreventable damage. So it's basically a wounded 2-cost 2/2, so it's already prepared to be destroyed by Klavek's Warleader. I guess it's nicely set up that you can heal it, but the only problem is there's not really a huge number of effects to do that, and in the meantime, it's looking pretty crusty as a, vanilla test passing unit with no ability whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like a shitty Black Mane Sentinel.
Yeah, people were saying, this guy is worse than the Ardent Auxiliaries, and
Ouch.
yeah, I don't know. So that's not the world's best unit. Maybe someday these guys are going to be amazing, but at the moment, there's just so much to be seen.
All it takes is one thing that makes them gain brutal, and then they're awesome.
Yeah, a 4/2 for 2, that would be pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess the signature attachment, something which starts to make Illuminor Szeras kind of cool, is its 1-cost attachment, the Eldritch Lance. It's 3 shields, war gear weapon attached to your warlord. Attached unit gets +1 attack, so he becomes a 2/8. Combat action is exhaust this attachment to remove 1 damage from a Necron unit at this planet. So you can target your warlord, you can target anything, but you've got to exhaust the attachment, unlike with a Gauss Flayer, and you gain a resource for healing one of your units. So it's kind of a subtle effect, but that's all right.
That's a Prometheum mine with a benefit. I mean, that's an extra resource a turn, right?
Sure, provided that you
Yeah.
can, strip off damage, which shouldn't be hard to do.
It's Conquest. If you can't, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, +1 attack is nice. He's a 2/8 now, and that's pretty solid. And then, like John says, you're going to be able to take damage off stuff. So.
Well, the other thing too is that this kind of mechanic makes you think that you don't want to run a swarm deck, like a cheap weenie deck, because healing damage is great, but if all your dudes die in 1 hit because everyone's swinging at them for 3 and they've got 2 hit points, then it's totally useless, right? So
Right.
you're going to want to get these guys with 4 hit points and 5 hit points just to flesh it out a bit. Otherwise, a lot of your cards may not see any use. I know whenever I play an Eldrath deck, or at least before all the vehicle stuff, if you didn't see like a Warlock Destructor or a Wild Rider, you didn't even need damage tokens. People were complaining. People were complaining the regionals only gave you 10 damage tokens. I'm like, I only need 4 for maybe 7 for my Warlord, and that's about it, right? Because everything else just dies before it stacks it up. So
Yeah. Well, I guess probably the coolest card. Well, he's got a couple cool cards remaining, but maybe my personal favorite card in his signature squad here is his signature support, the Dissection Chamber. It's a 2-cost support. It's a location trait and forced reaction. After an army unit enters play, deal it 1 damage. So this is not optional. It affects your units, and it also affects the enemy. So rogue traders and void pirates have to, you also have to pay a shield if you want to allow them to live. But what do you guys think about this giant game changer?
I think it's cool. I think it's nice that you can do it to yourself if you want to be able to gain money, and it's nice to, obviously, it's just cool in that you don't exhaust it. It just keeps happening over and over and over. So every time they deploy a unit, you can hit it for 1, or you can hit your own units for 1 if you've got, there could be a way to, strip mass damage off your units. There could be like a reverse warp storm where you can take 2 damage off every Necron unit you control or something, So it can be very cool, and the artwork is disgusting, like disgustingly cool though in some weird way. So.
Both.
Yeah.
It's just like a torso, like a beheaded torso with its entrails gutted and like hanging out on a table. And
I thought it was a cow.
This is like how vegetarians see Thanksgiving dinner like served.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm used to like eating turkey with like the guts spread out over the table.
Yeah, but like in their mind's eye, right? This is the most horrible situation that could ever be on the dinner table. So it's like
I don't know, man. I saw a I guess it wasn't a meme, but it was like I can't remember what it was called. It was like a turducken.
Oh yeah.
But it was
sure.
a squid, lobster, crab, or something like that. And it was the most horrific thing I've ever seen on a kitchen table.
Oh.
It was pretty disturbing.
That had to look worse than this.
Those sound like, well, except for the squid, those sound like some very inflexible animals that are being forced inside of one another.
Well, when you've got the will, there's a way, right?
I guess.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting card because it is a forced reaction, but technically you can choose whether or not to play it based on your matchup, right? Like if you're playing against Nazdrag should be like, okay, cool, thanks, buddy. All my bad docs have 4 command icons just from putting them in play, and everybody else is getting brutal. It's great. On the other hand, when you're playing, it is army units, so it won't take out Chimera tokens and that sort of thing. But if I've got an Eldorath deck with BL10 Guardians and all that sort of stuff, I can't play them unless I play a shield out afterwards.
Yeah.
And then of course his signature squad here, his augmented warriors now have 3 damage on them, so they got 1 hit point left.
Right. Well, I think what's cool is that also like, now they're like Elysian drop troops, and their eager recruits cost a shield icon addition. They cost them a shield card as well.
Right.
Oh, because it's interplay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, not deploy but interplay. Right?
Yep. Same thing with Maxos, which is pretty cool. I just think it's interesting that, of course, Necrons are going to want to play Void Pirates and Rogue Traders themselves as much as any other non-Tyranid faction, but kind of based on when you draw this card, it might actually end up hurting you quite a lot. And just like you said, John, when those augmented warriors, when they're coming into play with like 1 hit point, I guess we don't exactly know what the amount of healing that Illuminor is going to have access to will be, but like, man, that is not very appealing. Like a 2-cost 2/1. Yikes.
You can always go into the next card in his signature squad and provide some illumination.
Sure. So it is Vivisection. It's a 3-cost event. It's got a shield. It's a tactic. And action is target a planet, remove 1 damage from each Necron unit you control at the targeted planet, and deal 1 damage to each non-Necron unit at the targeted planet. So you're going to have to play your allied units pretty carefully, but that is a really cool global healing effect. It's kind of like Sam was saying, kind of like a half-damaging, half-healing Warp Storm analog, so...
You also may not play an allied unit at all, allied factions at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the healing abilities only work on Necrons, from what we've seen so far, so...
Sure, though it just seems like for any gimmick warlord like Gorzod, you don't want to go 100% vehicles, and I would imagine you're not going to want to go all Necron units. Like, you're still going to need a faction for your 2-cost, 2-command icon units and whatnot, so... I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
I just think that Vivisection, like, it's an expensive investment, but at the same time, when you heal a Necron, for each Necron you heal, that's an additional 1 resource, so it's possible that you could profit from this, and then we haven't really seen many, like, Necron events or combat tricks, but maybe you could fund that kind of thing.
So Vivisection could effectively be free.
Yeah.
Or actually turn you a profit.
Just so long as you've got the resources in the first place.
I think the
biggest
biggest problem is that this is expecting you to have damage on multiple units. Like,
sure.
Aside from with AoE, when you fight a battle at a planet, do you go, I'm going to do 1 damage to this guy. Oh, okay, now he's cool. I'm going to go do 1 damage to this guy.
No, dude. That's what noobs do.
You don't do that, right? You kill this guy.
Right.
And then you kill the next guy, right? So... I could see it maybe healing your warlord and the one guy that's getting beat on or something like that, most likely. But who knows?
Yeah. I guess this is a nice answer to Aatrox Prime or something, but
Sure.
yeah.
Barzul plays Blood for the Blood God, and you're like, woohoo!
Yeah, that's right. Poor life choice,
Right.
Barzul.
That's right. Well, the other thing too is, the obvious synergy with Dissection Chamber.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone's got 1 damage on them because Dissection Chamber. And then you go, by the way, your guys now have 2 damage on them, and my guys have none. So eat it.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap
Eat it.
it's not a cheap combo, and it's like a 1 of and a 2 of, but hey.
Yeah. So I will say probably the number one thing I'm excited about for this guy is to, let's say, the instant you draw a reanimating warriors, in my mind anyway, you might as well put it at planet number 1. It fights until it dies, and when it dies, that 3-cost unit gives you back a resource, and then you can shift it over to planet 2. So it's like for the entire game,
Those
provided.
guys are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, provided it doesn't have to take part in 2 battles in a row, like planets 1 and 2, it could potentially be like, eventually a net gain of resources from these warriors just fighting like the entire game long. So Illuminor Szeras definitely looks like he's an incomplete puzzle, but the pieces that I'm starting to see, I do like.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We got to see more, but I think there's a lot of room to grow here, so to speak.
Sure.
And he can also allow you to play a higher cost curve deck because of that. Like he could be the Necron elite warlord.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe so.
definitely.
And yeah, you're regarding the reanimating warriors. There's definitely not much that can stop them. But it's interesting is that with Nahumekh out, this says when the unit would be destroyed by taking damage, do the thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you can destroy it without making it take damage, like using Anrakyr's ability to make sorry, not Anrakyr, Nahumek's ability to make it a 2/0, it just goes to your dead pile or discard pile rather. And so it doesn't actually get to reanimate anymore.
Yeah.
And your 3 resources go to waste. But I think that may be the Ghost Flare would do it too. Aside from other Necrons, there's not much that can stop them.
It's looking like Necron mirror matches are going to be a little bit odd because, the enslavement dial thing will fail more often than not, and then there are going to be enough little effects where the reanimating warriors, you can kind of circumvent their effect, so it just seems like the Necrons aren't going to be able to fight at full capacity when they're pit against one another, which
Or Tyranids.
I don't know if it's fitting or not.
I mean, theoretically, it's the same disadvantage to both players,
sure.
I guess.
Well,
actually, I suppose it favors Anrakyr.
Like with Vivisection, you're removing 1 damage from each of your Necron units and then doing no damage to anybody.
Yeah.
Which is less cool. Or where's the fan for?
Just got to keep scrolling down.
No, I was looking for the fan for that 5-cost planet wipe looking card.
Oh, Extermination?
Yes,
Oh,
that's the one.
So that's let me see here. So Extermination is a 5 resource, 1 shield event, and as a deploy action, it's each non-unique, non-Necron unit at a target planet gets -3 HP until the end of the phase, and you must pass during your next deployment turn. So that's another thing where you're not able to touch another Necron player unless they're Nahumekh and they're really ally heavy.
But it's sort of balanced because Exterminatus is killing your own guys and their guys, and so for Extermination to actually potentially kill enemy units and not your units sometime is really good. On the other hand, I'm sure there are times where you'd rather just Exterminatus the planet and blow up everybody.
Sure.
Like when you've got 5 guys and I've got 1 or something like that. So
yeah. Oh, and I guess something worth mentioning before we move on from Illuminor Szeras' signature squad is for the Dissection Chamber. Brad Andrews, the lead designer, clarified that when a unit is deep striked, when it is flipped face up from being in reserve face down, it does not take a point of damage because when it was put into reserve, it entered play, but not as a army unit. It was just a card. So something worth noting there.
Yeah, see what I was wondering about when I saw that was if you have something like a Samehan Kinsman, does it enter play at the green planet and have 2 hit points, or does it, you know, I guess it would have to make
Yeah.
it to the planet first before it can be dealt damage, but
I think the developers have ruled that if a unit moves between like two green planets, would the same Han Kinsman lose its green icon during the period of transition? But it's not. It's like either at planet A or at planet B, and I would imagine it's either in your hand or at planet A.
yeah, I think,
Yeah, I think you're right.
as I was saying it out, as soon as
Sure,
it comes
sure.
to dealing it 1 damage, if it was, each unit gets -1 hit point, then maybe, but it needs to, land at its destination first, and then the damage dealing process starts probably. So
Yeah. Maybe if it was like as the unit is played, it takes 1 point of damage or something.
yep,
But I suppose
still gross art.
yeah. So he is an interesting guy. We've made some comparisons to Nahumekh and Anrakyr. I definitely think he's at the very low end of the power tier, but I don't feel like it's fair to cast judgment on this guy with such an incomplete picture. So I'm not ready to declare him Urian tier quite yet. And certainly some of our community were doomsaying him as being the new worst warlord yet. But I've got faith in our dev team, and Urian has been promised to get some support in the upcoming cycle, and I can only imagine that Illuminor Szeras is going to be seeing his fair share. I wasn't very impressed with Archon Selene Morn when she was first unveiled either, and just look at her now.
Right.
But we've got a card fan in front of us, so I guess, Sam, why don't you do us the honor of ending the episode with these?
Sure. All right. Well, we've got the one we can see in full is the Chaos Army Unit Noise Marines Warband. It is a 4-cost unit, but it can be deep struck. 1 command, 2/3, soldier Slanesh. So it's got a deep strike cost of 2. So if you deep strike it, it's just a total of 3. It has AoE 1. So I don't know how I feel about a 3-cost 2/3 that essentially doesn't have command, because if you're deep striking it, then command is over. So it's a 3-cost 2/3 no command AoE 1.
And you definitely never pay 4 for it just to put it in play and avoid the deep strike.
Yeah, definitely not. And I mean, I guess in Zera it's a 3-cost AoE 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good, but I don't know if I'd play this guy outside of Zera.
Yeah, it makes me think of Warp Storm, which also costs 3, but then it affects all of your own units.
Right. I think he's good in Zera. I just don't know if he's good in Barstool or Kuya.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm not impressed at all in Barzul, even though it would be nice that Barzul could maybe soak up the damage for this Area Effect 1. Like, don't get me wrong, Area Effect 1 is nice, but it's not necessarily the end of the world, and if you do want to put out a ton of damage, your 3 resources could probably be better spent elsewhere. I think it's a shame that this is a Slanesh trait unit, so it's not eligible for Blight Grenades. It is eligible for the Doom Siren, but that card is just ridiculous. Like, why spend 2 cards and 6 resources just to have Area Effect 1 affect up to 3 planets, sometimes only 2?
And of course you wouldn't be able to do deep strike and put the attachment on anyway, right?
Yeah, right. So you'd have to do the full cost of 4, which is just awful. But I do think it's cool that this is a Slanesh trait unit, and therefore a lot of people are all buzzing with, like, oh my god, are we indeed going to get a Slanesh trait Chaos Warlord? So I'm excited for that hopeful future. But whether or not this guy's going to be any good, I don't know. I can't think of any, like, Chaos Faction Soldier synergy.
I mean, if this is a preview of Slanesh Warlord, it just strikes me as another Warlord who's got cards that are better in Zera.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess so. But what about the Hot Shot Laze Pistol?
Yeah, it's a Astra Militarum attachment. 1 cost, 1 shield. It is common. I guess I should point that out that the Noise Marines Warband is loyal. But the Hotshot is common, and weapon war gear attached to an army unit you control. Attached unit gets +2 attack, and then I think it's damage. I think it's the only word in this game that ends in GE. Damage cannot be removed from units at the something planet as attached unit. So let's assume it's the same. So yeah, you can't remove damage from units at the planet this guy's at.
You go.
So,
Take that, Illuminor Szeras.
Yeah, I was going to say.
yeah, that's right.
And he is Urian tier.
Right.
We just broke him. Well, keep in
Although
mind...
the Noise Marines don't hurt Illuminor Szeras that bad.
No.
So
Keep in mind one thing, of course, is that, like if you're looking at... If you look at how much support Morn got this cycle, and how much support War got this cycle, I guess War is a little bit different because it's also helping Starblaze and whatnot. But I would imagine that Illuminor Szeras is going to get a lot of heal effects or units that have heal abilities on them or whatever in the third cycle here to help him out, because he needs something to help support him more so than the other Necron Warlords do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, do you guys see this as being viable? It's a cost of 1 +2 attack. We've got the M35 Galaxy Las gun, which is 1 cost +1 attack +1 hit point, but it bounces back to your hand when the attached unit leaves play. This does not. There's not a whole hell of a lot of healing effects in this game,
Nope.
especially one that we would see. Like, damage cannot be removed from units at the same planet as attached unit. Wouldn't that about suck if, like, this attachment was on a unit at Iridial where your warlord was, like, and you needed to heal it? Because I don't think you'd be able to remove that damage.
Yeah, like your warlord has 2 hit points left, and you win the battle with your warlord and a signature squad with a las pistol on it. You're like, I'm gonna trigger Iridial to heal my war. Oh, damn it.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But wait, when did this guy not be at Iridial if you won the battle?
If it was Planet 3 or something like that, like. Hopefully you would never put it out at a command unit that happens to be on Iridial, because either you're going to get screwed yourself when you go to heal yourself, or the enemy warlord is going to smoke the guy before he heals himself. So
yeah,
it's probably
But
a
I
bad
guess,
play.
yeah, right.
But for the cost of 1, do you guys view this as being worthwhile? A +2 attack value bonus. I could see it on like a Rattling Deadeye. It could be pretty superb. But then again, that's a lot of attachments on a 1 hit point unit.
I prefer the las gun simply because it can be recurred.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played with it, but I'm assuming it goes back to your hand, which means you could actually shield with it next turn if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
actually right after the unit dies.
Yeah, right after that unit dies.
I mean, if you can find a steady stream of income, being able to do +1/+1 to a unit every turn is pretty awesome. So.
Yeah. I like it though. I mean, I don't know how often I'll run it, but I do like it. +2. I mean, it's 1 attack less for the same cost as an ion rifle, but it has an ability that.
But you can't put an ion rifle in AM anyway, so.
Well, I was thinking
Starblaze.
Starblaze,
Well,
yeah.
Pop that on an anxious infantry platoon, and you're pretty happy when it swings for 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I there has to be more healing effects in the game for this thing to work, because right now there's really not that much. I mean, healing effects.
Yeah.
Like,
And maybe that's going to be part of the elite support that we keep getting teased with.
right. Yeah, maybe so.
But on the other hand, paying 1 for an attachment that gives +2 attack isn't all that bad either, right?
No, exactly. Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. So I'll be curious to see whether or not this ends up being a hit or if it flounders. But I guess just looking at the remaining cards, we've got a 2-cost army unit, Herald of the Tau Va. We can't really see anything apart from that the artwork clearly depicts an ethereal leading kind of a cadre of recruits. It's a 1 command icon, 1/3 each, something, gains something, and then it's probably got the ethereal forced reaction where after it resolves its
Probably.
attack, it bounces back to your HQ, but we don't know for sure. There's a 0-cost Eldar faction, something or other that we can see, like it starts with maybe an H, so it's a 0-cost common, not
It's an attachment.
deep striking attachment. Yeah. And then we've got a Dark Eldar 3-cost army unit, common masked hunter. And apart from him being shirtless and ripped and having like a glaive and what looks like 6 eyes on said mask, there's not really anything to be discerned there.
He does something with Chimera token. You can
Right,
see
right.
Era token at this planet. So
And he costs 3, so it better be something decent.
When a like creature, like URE creature, this unit as something Chimera token from somewhere planet, I don't know.
Yeah, no.
So maybe it's a Kith card, maybe not, but I guess that is the episode, guys. It's been a hell of a lot of news, a hell of a lot of Necron spoilers, but I guess any closing thoughts on Nahumekh, on Anrakyr the Traveller, or Illuminor Szeras, their playstyle, hopes and dreams regarding Legions of Death and beyond, or anything else you guys want to get off your chest?
well, I'm just excited to get the Necrons here. I mean, it looks like they're probably gonna, show up. If Pack 6 is coming here in the next, week and a half, these guys are already on their way. I've heard some people say they're going to be out in late May. I've heard other people say it's going to be June, but I would imagine it'd be June at the latest. So I'm just happy that we're not going to have this giant wait like we did for Tyranids. And I'm interested to see. I'm looking forward to play on Anrakyr, and I'm interested to see next cycle the support that will come out for Illuminor, because he looks interesting to me.
I would agree, yeah. I think that one of the most interesting things for me actually, I guess there's 2 points that I want to make. One of them is that, from what I understand of 40k miniatures players, they're very, very, very dedicated to a specific army or faction. And so now the release of Legions of Death marks the release of the last army that hasn't been released yet. I know 3 or 4 people in my area alone that are very dedicated to Necrons and are hoping to get into the game now that this is coming out.
Cool.
The other thing is, I think the biggest problem that the Tyranids had was that because they were a standalone faction that can't really ally with anybody, and all they had was a deluxe box, they were very limited in their design space. Whereas now we have the opposite with Necrons, where yes, they just have their deluxe box and there's no Necron cards outside of it, but because they can ally with anybody, like if you're going Anrakyr the Traveller, you don't need to worry that Necrons don't have that many 2 command units because you can import them, right? And so they won't have that disadvantage. So I think that they will be able to hit the ground running a lot better than the Necrons did, the Tyranids did rather. And I actually think that even at this point, they're probably still going to be more versatile than Tyranids are because of the card pool that they have access to.
Yeah, I do think one of the cool things will just be seeing all the different builds and like the community trying to figure out what builds and allies are best for Necrons. Like that would just be cool to see. Like, kind of like with the Tyranids, it didn't take long, but there was a little bit of like discovery of, man, 5 synapse choices. That's a lot. Like what can I do with all this? But this is going to be like that times, a magnitude of 10 or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just think it's going to be fantastic. So many new options for deck building, so many new allied options. And just like John said, I think with the advent of Legions of Death, they're going to be a very strong choice. I like everything I've seen thus far. Anrakyr does seem to stand head and shoulders above Nahumekh, but that could easily change in time just because there's so much that remains to be seen. But even Illuminor, I see a lot of potential there, and the Death World cycle cycle, we know next to nothing about the cards that have been spoiled so far, and it seems like every Planetfall cycle war pack is getting better and better. The next episode here of the Tyrantcast, I can only imagine that we'll be cracking open the final gambit and finishing the Planetfall cycle, so there's just so much spectacular stuff to come. When I put out the first Necron preview video, it probably got like 2.5 times as many views as a normal, you could say like a recent, like one of our latest warlords generally draws a lot more views than something a little bit older, and the Necrons performed, a couple and a half times again, as well as some hot newness performed. So people are obviously interested in this stuff. I think Conquest is in a very healthy place, and I can only imagine that things are going to get better and better, and I just really look forward to seeing what kind of impact the Necron faction makes when it comes to Worlds 2016. But I'm just excited for everything to do with this game, and I think I've said enough, and I'm cool with calling it here. So, thank you so much for coming on to the show, John. And before
No problem.
I do my standard plug, I guess anything you want to get out there, like do you want to promote the Facebook group or anything like that if somehow people don't already know it exists?
I think you just plugged it, actually.
I guess.
So I was just going to say happy birthday once again. I realize it's no longer your birthday, at least in my time zone, but hey.
Well, thank you very much. And I guess, Sam, since you do have things to promote, why don't you say your spiel?
The Black Crusade, the signups are over for the spring season, so you're going to have to wait till August if you want to join the next one. But head over to blackcrusadeleague.blogspot.com and you can see what we got going on over there.
Yeah, keep up with who's getting beaten by Urian Rakarth and who is winning. So it'll be great to just see how everything goes. And I look forward to recording the first featured match tomorrow between Dustin Drake and Brian Ruptash, barring some sort of technical error or octagon noobery. But I'll just say thanks again to John and Sam for coming on the show. Thank you to you, the listener, for joining us for this late night sleepy installment of the Tyrantcast. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button, share this video if you enjoyed this video podcast. More engagement with this content means more people are going to stumble upon Conquest. They might give the game a try, enjoy what they experience, and more people interested in this LCG means that we together grow our community, and Fantasy Flight Games will really have no option but to continue to pour development and research dollars into making this an even better game than it currently stands to be. If you ever want to get in touch with Sam or I or John, we're all on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and if you ever want to give back to the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored were you to consider making a small contribution to my Patreon. But as always, thank you so much for watching or listening, and be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come, and thank you for listening.